Chapter 2375. A Decisive Battle. The surrounding cultivators from the ancient god clan teamed up but felt a mighty pressure nonetheless. Facing Futian and his two companions, they were no longer as confident as before. Whether it was Yushang, Huajieyu, or Futian himself, these three had far exceeded their expectations. Yushang had smashed the arm of the Vajra divine child with a single blow, an injury that caused his opponent to exit the battlefield. Huajieyu blocked the two ninth realm cultivators with a single telepathic thought. With her guarding by Futian's side, the area around him was impervious to anyone's attack. As for Futian himself, the divine requiem was getting more powerful. The sound of Guqin seemed to contain powerful offensive force enough to destroy the great path. At the same time, sadness shrouded this space along with those beating musical notes. The entire space was under the influence of his rhythm. If it were just Futian alone playing the divine requiem by way of the sonic wave, perhaps he would not have been quite as effective in creating such a strong impact on these people. However, what he held in his hand was the divine Guqin yearning, transformed by the beloved of Shenin the Great. It also incorporated the soul of Shenin the Great as a memorial of their tragic love story. This divine Guqin itself had already carried an extreme sadness, so that every note that jumped out was full of sorrow. It didn't take long for the rhythmic storm to spread to the boundless void, and the entire world seemed to be covered in sorrow. Even Huajieyu was no exception. Under this rhythmic storm, she could feel that sadness as well. Of course, those sonic waves would not be attacking her, but they certainly concentrated all of their power directly on the minds of those cultivators from the divine prefecture. Those Renhuang in the 8th realm were the first ones who could not bear this overwhelming sense of grief. Take, for instance, the Vajra divine child and the heir of the infinite palace. Although they possessed great willpower, the divine requiem was the dirge of all ages. That sadness, which hid deep within their souls, suddenly sprung forth as great sorrow gushed forth like a fountain. They were meant to be mired in that extreme sadness, and their souls were trapped deep inside the endless sorrow. The cultivation of that cultivator in the 8th realm from Yuanshi Palace was extremely powerful. Terrible divine aurora shot out from his eyes as divine light lingered around him. A terrifying god-punishing will erupted from him, wanting to chase away the sadness, but his emotions were completely out of his own control. His mind recalled scenes long forgotten in the past, and they were all related to emotions hidden deep in his heart. He reached out with his hands and attempted to move, but found that his arms seemed to have stiffened. His will tried to control the power of the great path to execute the attack, but as soon as his mind moved, god-punishing swords whistled, but without the prowess they possessed previously. They seemed to function at a fraction of the power they had once. When his mind was unstable, how could he mobilize the full power of his great path? In Yushang's direction, a figure of the heavenly demon that had been summoned took a look yonder and then raised his hand to unleash a strike of the sword he held, which destroyed the god-punishing sword will outright. Its unstoppable momentum aimed squarely at his opponent. "Watch out!" the cultivator from Yuanshi Palace cautioned, as a white-haired elder let out a soul-wrenching shout, so the spiritual soul of the heir from Yuanshi Palace felt almost concussed. However, this unexpected shock seemed to sober up his will a little. He used what little will he had to release the most brilliant divine light of the great path. Picture upon picture of god-punishing sword matrix appeared in front of him, fiercely blasting forward. The demonic blade slammed down with mighty force, and those pictures of the matrix were shattered as they were being blasted apart. The body of the Yuanshi Palace's heir flew backward, and the domineering 9 slashes of the heavenly demon left a bloody mark on him. Can't even block it. The hearts of the cultivators from divine prefecture trembled. The Renhuang in the 8th realm had cultivations higher than Futian and Yushang. But on the battlefield, Yushang had urged the power of the demon gods, while Futian resorted to the divine Guqin of the great emperor. With their impeccable powers united up front, the Renhuang in the 8th realm were not their equal at all. Of course, Yushang also noticed that several cultivators in the 8th realm were affected by the rhythm. He rose into the air as the 6 demon gods he summoned pulled up the rear to form heavenly demon blades at the same time. Profuse demonic will was now causing considerable obfuscation in the boundless space, while the blades chopped down simultaneously in different directions, trying to crush and expel these Renhuang in the 8th realm out of the battle first. Under the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon, the heavenly demon sword will appear in the firmament like chaotic swordsmanship that could split open a corner of the sky. As they slammed down, they had no problem finding their targets in different directions. Several top genius talents in the 8th realm resisted with whatever means they had, but the result was the same. All of them were injured with a single blade attack, the force of which knocked them into the far distance. Clang. The sound of Guqin continued to invade their minds, shaking them down. The divine requiem delivered to the listeners a power that was enough to corrupt the spiritual soul. It was now directly attacking the spiritual souls of those cultivators in the 8th realm. A muffled groan came out of them as their faces paled. All of them were injured by the shock. These cultivators from the divine prefecture had been relentless in forcing his hand. After dodging their provocation time and again, with these people refusing to give up, Futian would no longer hold back. These 8th realm cultivators were all enchanting geniuses from top principalities. Although they had their own aces up their sleeves, it was ultimately difficult for them to persist under this kind of orchestrated attack. They found it difficult to play their aces. They were repelled and injured. They had no choice but to extract themselves from the battle. The remaining cultivators in the 9th realm didn't bother to lend a hand either. As soon as they heard this composition, they knew there was no hope for these Renhuang in the 8th realm. Under the blanket effect of the Guqin, even their own emotions were being overwhelmed. Their will and spiritual souls were affected like never before. Therefore, these cultivators in the 8th realm would only be a burden if they stayed. Ultimately, it was left for Futian and Yushang to expel several of these cultivators in the 8th realm off the battlefield and to retire them from battle. The sound of Guqin continued as before. As Futian played, the rhythm was continuing to increase in strength. The vast and boundless world was covered by the rhythm, as traces of invisible sonic waves seeped into the minds of these cultivators in the 9th realm who were still on the battlefield. They stood there quietly, surrounded by the divine light before, but their eyes became more serious. On the ground below, everyone from the divine prefecture quietly watched the situation developing in the void. At this moment, the battlefield was becoming quieter than before, but it seemed way more oppressed as well. There were not many left in that vast area up on high. Futian's party of 3 were up against the 4 Renhuang in the 9th realm from the divine prefecture. These 4 people were already at the peak of the Renhuang realm, and they were well-known figures in the land of the divine prefecture, existences whose names rang throughout the world. But now, these 4 cultivators were facing Futian, Hua Jieyu, and Yushang, with only 1 9th realm and 2 7th realm cultivators among them. It seemed that this was not a fair fight at all on the same level. However, considering that Futian was using the divine Guqin, and Yushang had released the demonic secret arts to increase his combat effectiveness, there was a feeling that they actually had the ability to battle these higher-level cultivators. As for the West Imperial Palace, they did not participate in this battle. Shichiao looked at the battlefield high in the sky, feeling some complicated emotions in her heart. It seemed that she greatly underestimated Futian and his companions. She had thought that Futian was the only top enchanting genius in his circle. She didn't expect that Hua Jieyu and Yushang were also existences of a similar caliber. However, this also confirmed her previous belief that Futian was not as straightforward as he appeared. There must be some secrets they didn't know about him. Chapter 2376, Wang Mian of Tianyin City. On that battlefield in the void, the 7 of them simply stood there. Futian sat cross-legged, playing the Guqin, while Hua Jieyu stood next to him. There were also avatars guarding them, summoned by Yushang, who had called on the heavenly demons. And in different positions in front of them, 4 cultivators were peak Renhuang of the 9th realm. They were Hua Junmo of the Haotian clan in the Nantian domain. He was the older brother of Hua Junlai, who had been defeated by Futian. Pei Sheng, divine child of infinite mountains. Jiang Qingfeng from the ancient god clan's Jiang family in the Taishang domain. Wang Mian from Tianyin City in the Tianyin domain. These four major cultivators were peak Renhuang from their own respective domains. As they stood at the pinnacle of Renhuang, their combat effectiveness was nothing less than extraordinary. And without exception, they were all of them from the ancient god clan. Haotian clan inherited power from Haotian the Great, infinite mountains from Wuliang the Great, the Jiang family from Heavenly Emperor Jiang, Tianyin City in the Tianyin domain from Tianyin the Great himself. Previously, the other three cultivators had already taken their shots one after the other. Although they did not mean to cause serious injuries, they had released their true strength. Now, only Wang Mian from Tianyin City had not made his move yet. A sharp golden divine glory had been surrounding him, and there was something curious about the divine light that lingered around him. It was as if it could be transformed into thousands of different matrices. In the 18 domains of the divine prefecture, each domain had its own profound history and backstory. In ancient times, prominent figures had emerged out of every one of these domains, and many of them enjoyed the appellation of the Great Emperor. To this day, all 18 domains had retained some of their own particular features. The imperial domain where Donghuang Imperial Palace resided needed no further introduction. But other domains also had many surprising peculiarities. The Tianyin domain, for instance, had always been a world-famous alchemical holy land for as long as recorded history. It was said that the Tianyin domain, in ancient times, had once enjoyed exceptional prosperity, with many famous clans of armorers lining its streets. Countless cultivators from the other worlds came to the Tianyin domain for the express purpose of seeking its ritual implements, accounting for much of its flourishing past. But after the collapse of the heavenly path, every world had experienced its own decline. The Tianyin domain was not as magnificent as it once was, but its heritage for alchemy remained intact, and the ancient god clan had survived. Tianyin the Great was once in existence of the imperial-level alchemist, whose reputation was indisputable. He enjoyed great prestige among his peers. Some said that even today, Tianyin the Great may still exist in another form, such as an item or object to aid another future great being. They also said that he had since remained in Tianyin City. Tianyin City was a city, but it was also a principality. The entire city belonged to the descendants of Tianyin the Great. The Wang family in Tianyin had absolute control over Tianyin City. It was a de facto palace for the Wang family. Because of their armor-making skills, even today, Tianyin City held superiority in all of the divine prefecture. Its strength was tremendous, and Wang Mian, a genius talent from Tianyin City, was said to have the potential to become the future city lord of Tianyin City, ruling over ancient god clan. Wang Mian's gaze now drifted towards Futian. Like everyone else, he had heard the invasive sound of the guqin, and his emotions were somewhat affected. However, those who had cultivated to the peak of Renhuang were not so easily swayed, as their will had to be incredibly determined. Those with stronger realms were less likely to be affected by the sound of the guqin. Of course, it also hinged on Futian's own realm. Had Futian's realm surpassed theirs, they would have been more likely to come under his influence. In truth, I came to the Heavenly Mandate Academy to borrow something from you. Wang Mian looked at Futian and said, "If you are willing to lend it to me, I will leave with the rest of the people from Tianyin City. In the future, I will return to you the thing I borrowed, and Tianyin City will be indebted to you." Everyone from the Divine Prefecture was quite surprised when they heard what Wang Mian had to say. They looked in the direction where the cultivators from the Wang family in Tianyin had congregated. What did they want to borrow from Futian? Everyone knew the kind of place Tianyin City was. Legend had it that Tianyin City possessed the most powerful ritual implements of all 18 domains. There was even the possibility that an incomparable army may have existed somewhere there because, after all, they highly suspected that Tianyin the Great might still be around. What would Tianyin City possibly need so badly that they had to borrow it from Futian? Unless they all thought of a possibility. Futian's head lowered as he continued playing the guqin. He uttered a word from his mouth, "No." He didn't ask him what it was that he wanted to borrow, but whatever item asked for by the ancient god clan would clearly not be something simple or easy. And Futian would never try to entertain anyone like this to neutralize their hostility, no matter who they were. Wang Mian and the other cultivators from Tianyin City fixed their eyes on Yi Futian as they heard his reply. Many watched him with a sharp intention in their eyes, but they weren't offended by it, really. If Yi Futian didn't lend it to them, they would take it from him. Although Yu Sheng and Hua Jieyu were here to help Yi Futian today, the reality remained that all the top principalities of various domains from the Divine Prefecture had come here to knock him down. They would never give up so easily. It was almost impossible for Yi Futian to extricate himself from this situation, as it were. Inevitably, he would need to pay in exchange for his own safety. Wang Mian didn't seem to have heard Yi Futian's refusal at all, as he continued, Emperor Yi has the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, of which Tianyin City is extremely interested. We are hoping that Emperor Yi could let us use the body of Shunjia, the great emperor. No wonder. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture were not surprised when they heard what he had said. They had half expected it already. Exactly what kind of principality was the Wang family of Tianyin? They were the #1 armorer of the Divine Prefecture, whose power was inherited from Tianyin the Great. Whatever they wanted must have something to do with weapon-making or alchemy. Therefore, there could only be two possibilities. One was the Divine Guqin, and the other was the corpse of Shunjia, the Great Emperor. The Divine Guqin had integrated the soul of Shenin the Great within it, hence possessing its current power. However, the corpse of Shunjia the Great had already been cast into a superior weapon, and the corpse itself was considered a most excellent and peerless divine weapon. It was just that Yi Futian's realm was not yet high enough to urge its full power. Therefore, Tianyin City was desirous to get their hands on it, hoping to see how Shunjia the Great Emperor managed to achieve such greatness and whether this great emperor's divine body could be deciphered. "Shut your trap!" a cold voice rebuked with mighty dominance. Accompanied by this voice was a terrible demonic light that appeared above the firmament presently. It traversed heaven and earth, smashing down for the kill. The demonic might tossed and roared, slashing at Wang Mian without hesitation. It was Yu Sheng who had unleashed his own attack. Wang Mian could call it borrowing if he liked, but it was really no different than robbing. With all these principalities here to pressure and threaten Yi Futian, could this be considered borrowing? There was a terrifying golden divine glory in Wang Mian's eyes. He cast one glance forward and watched the demonic blade came down in front of him with unusual calmness. Suddenly, a golden divine wall appeared in front of him, countless runes flowing upon it. Thus, the divine wall that fell from the sky formed a barrier in front of him. As those runes jumped out and erupted into rays of terrible divine aurora, pest! A sharp and piercing sound came out as a tremendously domineering heavenly demon blade slammed down. But this dominant demonic blade, capable of splitting the space apart, failed to carve open the divine wall. At the moment when it chopped down, it was as if it landed on the strongest divine wall in the world. The blade broke, but it did not damage the defense. Obviously, the power of this strike still left something to be desired. Wang Mian, peak Renhuang existence from Tianyin City. How powerful was he? When these four cultivators started to treat this situation seriously, perhaps Yi Futian's little party of 3 would not stand a chance of winning. Chapter 2377, Coordination. On the battlefield, Wang Mian's gaze landed on Yi Futian, who was playing the Divine Guqin. He said, "The Divine Requiem is indeed strong, but it isn't insuppressible. As long as the space in this area is completely sealed and locked down, what effect could the sounds of the Guqin have?" As he spoke, the divine lights on him erupted, and his golden iris looked ahead. Instantly, the divine wall before him expanded rapidly. It looked as if it was flowing and combined the properties of strength and softness. As it levitated, it expanded vertically. The crowd raised their heads and watched the divine wall. Inside, an unending array of divine light beams shrouded the space from the celestial skies to the ground, continuing to move toward where Yi Futian was. Moreover, the divine wall appeared behind Yi Futian as well. Soon, the 3 great cultivators were drowned inside the walls and were mere inches away from being sealed. The sounds of the Guqin seemed to be affected as well. The Divine Prefecture cultivators watched the battlefield quietly. Wang Mian was the heir to the Tianyin Emperor of Tianyin City, so there were no doubts about his power. With Yu Sheng's current plane, it would be very difficult for him to break through Wang Mian's sealing powers. Once the space in that area was sealed, it would be no small feat to break out and escape. All of the greatest cultivators could forge their own dominions, which they would have absolute control over. But Yi Futian didn't even react to it. He was still playing the Guqin piece. He didn't move, so Hua Jieyu stood quietly by his side and didn't move either. Yu Shang was in front. His demonic might surged and roared as he stared at the scene before him. Soon, the hexagonal space was completely sealed. The divine wall trapped them within this sealed space, and a magnificent golden divine light erupted from within. Close. As the word came out from Wang Mian's mouth, a deep and muffled sound could be heard from inside. Now, as the dominion was formed, the seal had been completed. With the power of this absolute seal, no power of the great path could seep through it, even if it were the formless great path of rhythm. There was no way the Guqin sounds could escape and affect them. As the seal was formed, they all listened for any sounds. Wang Mian wasn't too concerned about the Guqin sounds that continued to echo the area, as some parts of the piece were already played previously. Naturally, its power would linger for a while more, but it should dissipate soon. The other three great cultivators watched from different locations. If Wang Mian could really seal the three, then Yi Futian's Guqin would be useless. Furthermore, if they could deal with them inside the sealing dominion, perhaps Wang Mian alone would be able to defeat them. They raised their heads and glanced at the void. Just then, waves of sound broke through into their ears. Immediately, the will of grief appeared from deep within their souls. Even their hearts trembled lightly as it happened. The divine requiem seemed to be getting more and more aggrieved, and the storm of rhythm and notes which encased the world around them got stronger as well, as though it had permeated through all matter. As they perceived the rhythmic pulses in the skies of the area, they realized that not only did it not subside, it was getting stronger. Wang Mian felt it too. It only took a moment to sense it. He stared forward, and his gaze passed through the dominion set by himself to see Yi Futian inside. Yi Futian was still playing the Guqin with his head lowered. It seemed like he wasn't affected by the dominion at all. His mentality was also unfazed by the powers of the seal. It was as though he knew from the beginning that the powers of the seal could not block his divine requiem. Wang Mian's expression was a little uneasy. He had already guessed the answer. "What's going on?" one of the divine prefecture Renwangs asked, puzzled. Wang Mian was of a far stronger plane than Yi Futian, yet his sealing powers didn't manage to seal Yi Futian's great path of music. Some of the cultivators who had already overcome the divine tribulation instantly understood why. They looked at the skies as their expressions turned more solemn. They were able to sense part of it previously when Yi Futian and Shi Qiao battled, but they didn't think that Wang Mian would meet the same results. What did this mean? This meant that while Wang Mian's dominion sealed the physical space in the area, it didn't seal Yi Futian's dominion, which meant that all of them were still within Yi Futian's dominion of music. Yi Futian's boundary wheel was even more powerful than Wang Mian. So powerful that Wang Mian and the others didn't even realize that they were still within the region set by Yi Futian. It seemed that the only way to break through Hua Jieyu's defense was with brute force, after which they could squash Yi Futian so he would be unable to keep playing the divine requiem. Wang Mian reached out. Instantly, the countless runes within the divine walls of the void seal pulsated, twisted, and turned, and streamed out with magnificent divine light. Numerous golden spears formed on the divine walls, all of which were pointed at Yi Futian. Each of the spears was imbued with the will of the indestructible. Behind the spears were matrices which induced the proliferation of this power, which only got stronger and stronger. That moment, it seemed as if there was an unending array of matrices revolving on the divine walls of the hexagonal sealed space, as an uncountable number of golden spears pointed toward where Yi Futian was. Kill. Wang Mian's voice sounded. Dragging on this battle would be disadvantageous to them. As his voice echoed in the air, one after another divine light ray erupted inside the sealed space, and the golden spears were launched at an immense speed, cutting across the void and bolting towards Yi Futian. The spears were so fast that the naked eye could only see beams of golden light. As Hua Jieyu's gaze swept across the world around her, within a split second, countless afterimages poured out from her. At that moment, it was as though the entire void in the area was in a state of absolute stillness. Her immense telekinetic powers controlled the operations of the worldly great path within the area, its power far exceeding what she had released previously. The golden light beams that emitted magnificent gleams before reappeared and formed back into spears. Their speed slowed as it became difficult to move under Hua Jieyu's absolute control. It seemed that everything in this sealed space was under her command. Wang Mian's palm slammed forward as the divine golden lights from his iris glowed brighter. A supreme force flowed into the divine walls and accelerated the revolution of the matrices to spit out even more golden spears. Boom! As the divine lights shot out, terrifying forces erupted and launched toward Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu. Jieyu, lend me a hand. Yi Futian's voice sounded in Hua Jieyu's head with musical notes that seeped into her consciousness. Hua Jieyu instantly understood Yi Futian's intention. Hua Jieyu had absolute trust in him and wouldn't resist anything that he asked of her. She let down all of her defenses and let Yi Futian enter. Quickly, she felt like something was happening. Their spiritual energies seemed to be resonating. It was as if Yi Futian was sharing with her every bit of his existence. Strands of phantasmagorical lights shrouded the two of them. Hua Jieyu's cultivation method was already unique, making it easy for her to coordinate with Yi Futian. The two of them entered a strange yet marvelous state. They could both sense everything about each other, and they could even use each other's power. This feeling was otherworldly. It was as though if Hua Jieyu willed it, she could play the divine requiem as well. Their consciousnesses were completely interconnected. Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu were close together. One of them sat in a cross-legged stance, while the other stood up. As divine lights surrounded them, it was as though the two of them merged into one. Their consciousnesses were interconnected, and their telekinetic powers fused together. They were able to sense every fragment of each other's being. When Shanin the Great composed this otherworldly piece titled The Divine Requiem, he was crowned as the greatest musician of his era. It wouldn't be difficult to imagine the level of music which he had attained. He had composed countless Guqin pieces throughout his life, and every single one could be considered a masterpiece. They may not even be much weaker than the Divine Requiem. However, the Divine Requiem was too unique. When the Divine Requiem was played, all of the world experienced grief, which was why it was considered a divine melody. Now, under the background of the Divine Requiem, Yi Futian played another piece, Hearts as One. The piece Yi Futian played at the Lost Clan to cause a metamorphosis of the battle matrix of the rocks actually had the same core idea as this piece. In fact, that piece had been a variation of Hearts as One. This Guqin piece was composed by Shanin the Great when he was together with the love of his life. They had shared everything, including their own cultivation and thoughts. Anyone could see how deeply in love they were. Their love was so deep that when his one true love passed on, Shanin the Great composed the Divine Requiem. An even more terrifying storm of music erupted in an instant. The divine consciousness gushing out of Yi Futian became more powerful. The power of the great path which he commanded surged, and every note that pulsated out from him contained deeper and deeper artistic conception. Whether it was the four great cultivators or the cultivators from the divine prefecture, they all felt the Guqin sounds getting stronger. And so did Yi Futian. As Wang Mian felt everything inside the sealed space, his gaze became sharper and his pupils constricted. Yi Futian could actually borrow cultivation from someone else? Although he had heard of it before, such techniques were extremely rare and always had some cost. There was indeed a cost to Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu's fusion. Yi Futian must be able to bear the burden of Hua Jieyu's telekinetic powers, and Hua Jieyu must be able to completely open up to him and have absolute trust in him. Otherwise, there would be severe backlash for using the technique. In essence, this was equivalent to Hua Jieyu handing her life over to Yi Futian. Even if someone did succeed in practicing a cultivation method like this, very few would be able to commit to it at such a level. I see. So this is Jieyu's cultivation method. Yi Futian felt happy for Hua Jieyu after sensing her consciousness. He knew Jieyu would run into great opportunities cultivating in the divine prefecture. As the sounds of the Guqin shrouded the skies and the earth, It was as if everything was under Yi Futian's control within this sealed space. Golden spears, which emitted magnificent divine lights, continued to blast down from above. Yet, as Yi Futian's fingers ran over the guqin and melodies strummed out, the golden spears crumbled one by one, exploding in the air. Within his vast dominion, everything was destroyed. With one thought, all of the spears were obliterated. With his palms still on the divine wall, Wang Mian's pupils constricted as he saw the scene before him. His golden iris looked toward Yi Futian's figure inside the sealed space. He sensed his surging aura. It seemed as though Hua Jieyu and Yi Futian had merged into one. They were indistinct from each other. Their wills resonated, and their powers fused together. With one strum of the guqin, all of his attacks were annihilated. Only the combined power of both of their telekinesis could do something like this. Magnificent divine lights continued to shine on the divine wall. The patterns on them formed into matrices as if brewing new attacks. But as Yi Futian hands strummed the divine guqin, one note after another pulsated out. Under the will of grief of the divine requiem, these notes were imbued with powers that could destroy great paths, causing the patterns on the divine walls to burst, destroying the flawless matrices inside the sealed space. Boom, boom, boom. Gaps started to appear in the divine wall due to the blast of the explosions, and the size of these gaps increased continuously. Gradually, it was as though the entire space was collapsing as the vast divine wall disintegrated. Yi Futian, Hua Jieyu, and Yu Shang's figures appeared before the cultivators once again. However, the auras on Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu were no longer the same as before. They were almost indistinct from each other. Shrouded by divine lights encircling them, the two seemed like a godly couple. Not bad, Wang Mian said as he looked toward the two. He took one step forward as his aura surged. His expression became more solemn as he sensed that the will of the divine requiem was getting stronger, and it was swaying his emotions. Various imageries and scenes were starting to play back in his mind to waver his determination and weaken it. If his determination was influenced and his emotions were controlled by someone else, then his powers would be weakened. Letting this continue would be disadvantageous to them. The other three of the four great cultivators realized this as well. They could sense that the endless celestial skies and the lands that extended beyond the horizon were all shrouded in a formless storm of music. It was everywhere. The terrifying sound pulses were still invading their minds at an alarming rate. "It's time," Wang Mian said. Hua Junmo from the Haotian clan, Pei Sheng from the Infinite Mountains, and Jiang Qingfeng from the Jiang Ancient God clan all nodded. Their gazes locked in the direction Yi Futian was in. Divine lights encircled them, and astounding auras erupted from them. At this moment, the four great ninth plane Renhuang cultivators finally got serious and were ready to attack simultaneously. Previously, they all looked down on their opponents to some degree. But now, Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu's fusion of powers made them sense critical danger. Sounds of the Great Path started resonating through the world as the projection of an ancient god appeared behind Hua Junmo. It was as if Haotian the Great had descended upon the world, dominating all who stood before him. He looked down onto the battlefield as his body produced a supremely overbearing aura. Boom! As Hua Junmo raised his hand, the godlike figure exerted a force of assault. From up in the void to all the way down, a cosmic Haotian seal engulfing the skies appeared, blocking all celestial skies that the three could see. There was nowhere to run. With a thought, Pei Sheng summoned countless phantasms which filled the entire area. Each one of them seemed to be a manifestation of him. As his true self waved his palm, all of the nearly infinite phantasms attacked, wielding their divine swords and dashing towards the three with killing intent, blocking out all possible escape routes. Jiang Qingfeng stomped on the void. His figure appeared atop the three, summoning a terrifying storm of space, ravaging the area. Behind Wang Mian, a colossal golden pattern appeared. This pattern rapidly expanded towards the skies, shrouding the skies and blocking out the sun. With terrifying booms, it was as though the worldly Great Path was smelted into the pattern, creating a petrifying black hole that swallowed all Great Path powers. Countless divine lights were reeled into it as the entire area turned into an apocalyptic region of obliteration. Anything that got close would be turned into ash and dust. Boom. Crack. A horrifying noise sounded. The force of the storm descended downward to shroud the vast space below. Within the gold-edged tornado storm, a magnificently shining divine spear rose. It looked like a true divine weapon, pulsating and emitting divine lights that spanned thousands of miles. As the spear smote down from the celestial skies, it caused a terrifying gash to appear, stretching from the skies to the ground. Chapter 2379. The Exchange. The sound of Guqin sounded even more urgent under Yi Futian's fingers. What came with the sound of Guqin was the suffocating coercion that filled this vast space presently. It was as if the great path between heaven and earth was about to solidify, and even time and space were about to come to a standstill. In this oppressive space, the attacks from the other four cultivators did not stop but continued to press forward against them. Futian Madra came slamming down, completely covering this corner of the sky. Every note Yi Futian was playing exploded as they came in contact with the Futian Madra. However, the Madra, as released by Hua Junmo, was far too terrifying. It was as if that phantom of Futian the Great had pressed down from above the sky, destroying everything that was in its path. Likewise, an imperial shadow appeared behind Yi Futian with tremendous horror. Stars encircled the surrounding space as infinite beams of starlight shot out, and all the heavenly bodies were unified. Under the sound of the Guqin, countless stars blasted toward the Futian Madra, hitting their mark again and again so that the Futian Madra trembled continuously. At the same time, with Yi Futian in the center, all the stars in this world spread out everywhere. So it was as if Yi Futian and his companions were inside a real starry sky world. The many attacking divine swords were being blocked by the stars, and whenever they penetrated through those interfering stars and zoomed in on Yi Futian, they were destroyed by the hopping musical notes. Boom! The space-destroying storm released by Jiang Qingfeng traversed the void and came at them as if it could pass over their defenses and transform into a power akin to divine tribulation. It went in the direction where Yi Futian was without the slightest hesitation. As for the golden divine spear released by Wang Mian, as soon as that divine spear bloomed, cracks appeared in the void, and the stars that were guarding in front of him shattered and were pulverized. The momentum of that long spear was unstoppable as it continued to puff out infinite divine light. The power of the joint attacks from these four top figures was frightening, and this world seemed to be on the verge of breaking apart. The scenes that played out before them were apocalyptic. The sound from the Guqin suddenly changed, and the space of the great path began to flow in reverse, as infinite sword will circulated between heaven and earth. Yi Futian's sleeves fluttered, and the notes he played exploded with sharp and piercing sounds as the sound of sword chiming resounded throughout the void. Countless divine swords whizzed out, carrying the divine light, and collided with that light of catastrophe. At the same time, a powerful divine sword appeared between heaven and earth. When this sword manifested, a storm made of countercurrents appeared in the void. Song of the Lost Divine. Everyone from the divine prefecture was greatly stunned. This was yet another divine melody. No one expected Yi Futian to have evolved to such an advanced degree and could use the skills freely and at will. With just a single turning of his mind, he readily and seamlessly switched between musical pieces. Lord Taixian watched the development in the sky below and was deeply moved. It was by chance that Yi Futian came to cultivate the Song of the Lost Divine, and it was a purely fortuitous happenstance. It was with the Song of the Lost Divine that he was able to break the shackles of Renhuang. But now, Yi Futian's accomplishment in this composition had surpassed his countless years of hard work. Perhaps this was a testament to Yi Futian's natural talent. The Song of the Lost Divine was the lost sound of the Great Path. As the Great Path collapsed, the space was distorted and flowed in reverse. The offensive power that had been stymied seemed to be hindered yet again, and the golden divine spear that came in for the kill slowed down a bit as well. Soon after, the Great Path started to flow back with the countercurrent. It was as if time was moving in reverse. A sword came in to attack, carrying a terrifying power with it. It was none other than the fleeting divine sword that collided harshly with the golden divine spear. The moment the two collided, a terrifying divine light pierced through the space as if it could slaughter all the Renhuang in this space with that light alone. The dazzling light beam blinded many Renhuang observing the fight, and it made it impossible for them to open their eyes. Many cultivators in the heavenly Mandate City felt a sharp pain in their eyes which caused them to shut their eyes tightly. Above the firmament, the two forces collapsed and destroyed each other at the same time. The divine spear and the divine sword disappeared together. Watching the battlefield above the firmament, the hearts of all the cultivators quivered. Just with the sound of the Guqin alone, they had effectively blocked the coordinated attacks from these four great cultivators. It seemed that when Yi Futian played the divine Guqin with Hua Jieyu's power, he could exert far greater strength than on his own. "Jieyu, why don't you come and play the divine requiem?" Yi Futian said to Hua Jieyu, who was next to him. "Sure." Hua Jieyu consented with a slight nod. She sat down cross-legged beside Yi Futian. As Yi Futian gave a little wave of his hand, the divine Guqin yearning appeared in front of Hua Jieyu. She was the daughter of Yi Futian's first teacher, Hua Fenglu. She had been playing Guqin since she was a young girl. Although she had not continued to pursue it and couldn't be considered an expert, she did understand the concept of rhythm. But at this moment in time, she and Yi Futian shared one mind, and she didn't need to be an expert. All she needed was their mutual understanding. Whatever she was playing was, in fact, what Yi Futian was playing in his heart. Even more so, it was with the help of divine Guqin yearning, which had been transformed by Shanin the Great himself. The Guqin itself already embodied the feeling of extreme sadness. When Hua Jieyu plucked the strings, she seemed to be immersed completely in that sorrowful mood. She was in perfect sync with the musical meaning of the composition. The atmosphere previously created by the divine requiem was still lingering in the space, having never disappeared. When Hua Jieyu started to play, she was merely sustaining the sorrow expressed by the music. How sad! All the cultivators from the divine prefecture, who were watching on the sideline, couldn't help but lament when they heard this music. Hua Jieyu's performance of the divine requiem was similar in feeling to Yi Futian's performance, but the sadness she expressed was of a different kind. The magnitude of the tragedy that Hua Jieyu had to endure personally, compared to Yi Futian, was perhaps on an even grander scale. After all, as a woman, she had been taken away by her family and forbidden to continue her relationship with Yi Futian. She had used death as a way to prove her faithfulness, and she had also protected others with her life. She had lost her memory once and became someone else. All that she had experienced was full of endless desolation. Moreover, today's Hua Jieyu had lived through countless lifetimes and experienced too much sorrow. In the brief moment that she had been playing the divine requiem, there were already tears in the corner of her eyes. Yi Futian did not stop just because Hua Jieyu was playing the Guqin. He raised his hand and reached out. The great path was the string of an instrument made from heaven and earth. Guqin's spirit had always been part of Yi Futian's life spirit, imbued with the rhythm and sound of the hearts linked him to Hua Jieyu, making them one. Yi Futian's gaze swept across the void, perceiving everything between heaven and earth. Hua Jieyu was playing the divine requiem as controlled by him. At the same time, he was perceiving Jieyu's unique abilities. When he closed his eyes, it was as if everything in this world was under his command, and he could perceive everything in this world as they were all under his power of telekinesis. It seemed that he could even see into the spiritual souls of the four great cultivators, perceiving the existence of the souls inside their bodies. What? The eyes of the four major cultivators showed a slight alarm as they sensed that something was amiss. In this instance, they could feel that someone was stalking their spiritual souls, which was, in itself, an incredibly uncomfortable sensation. It was as if they were being spied upon. There was no privacy to speak of. In the void, Yi Futian's raised a finger. It lightly trembled as if he had plucked the strings of the great path. At that moment, everyone felt their heartstrings trembled as well. It was as their spiritual souls had been shaken. Although it was very slight, it was the most uncomfortable feeling. A strange situation now transpired on the battlefield. Under Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu's joint efforts, the battle seemed to have stalled. Yu Shang had not yet made any moves, and these four cultivators were already in trouble. They seemed to find themselves in an extremely embarrassing situation. Not only were they unable to break through the defense of their opponents, but the sound of the guqin also had a noticeable effect on their diminishing combat effectiveness. If Yi Futian's performance of the Divine Requiem before was not enough to threaten them, it was because his realm was lower. But now, it was Hua Jieyu who was playing with her powerful mind. Hers was connected with Yi Futian's, so that she could express the mood of the Divine Requiem perfectly. Not to mention Yi Futian gave her the Divine Guqin yearning to play. The atmosphere was so charged that in just a few short moments, the vast and endless void seemed to be shrouded in desolation. The cultivators of the heavenly mandate city below who had been watching the battle in the sky now found an unimaginable sense of sadness in their hearts. Across the endless void, the sound of guqin softly blanketed the land below and entered the heavenly mandate city. Although the strength of the rhythm that reached the city was on the weaker side, it could still cause countless cultivators to fall into that sorrowful spirit until many of them began to cry uncontrollably. And in the middle of the battlefield, these 4 cultivators from the ancient god clan, who were already affected by the mood transmitted by the guqin, were now under unimaginable pressure. When they were attacked by Yi Futian before, their emotions had inevitably altered. A myriad of imageries began to appear in their minds, and gradually, their mentalities were held hostage by their emotions. There was a sense of grief that came from the bottom of their hearts. This sense of grief seemed to originate from inside out, from their hearts and their spiritual souls. They involuntarily thought of memories that had long been hidden in their pasts. They could clearly feel that their grip over the great path in the surrounding heaven and earth was weakening. Yi Futian could see the changes taking place on these cultivators, and he knew very well how powerful was the Divine Requiem. Although this power was invisible and its destruction could not really be detected outright, Hua Jieyu's telekinesis prowess coupled with Divine Guqin was more than enough to trap all of them with no turning back. It was only a matter of time. Yi Futian's outstretched hand was moving continuously, caressing the invisible strings, until each beating note hit the soul directly, causing the listeners' spiritual souls to quiver. Although it was not enough to injure the others, it was chipping away at their will little by little until they finally collapsed and surrendered to that despair. They walked forward, and an even more terrifying aura bloomed from them. Under the lingering divine light, the shadow of Haotian the Great behind Hua Junmo pressed down again, blasting out an apocalyptic Haotian Madra. Nonetheless, cultivators from the divine prefecture could feel something was not quite right. Hua Junmo seemed to be affected, someone whispered. Well, no one is exempt from the effects of the Divine Requiem. This Haotian Madra was unleashed little too prematurely and does not have the momentum it did before. The discernment of these top figures was extremely astute, and they could calculate the power of the attack in a single glance, discerning the level and mental state of the person who released the attack. Yi Futian was unmoved. As the strings were plucked, mighty sword will was gathering as numerous divine swords rushing up against the momentum, hitting the Madra in the midst of that terrifying storm. Horrific rumbling sounds were heard as the Madra oscillated, bursting little by little until the swords had turned into a storm, stabbing madly until the Haotian Madra was pierced, then completely exploded. Hua Jieyu focused her attention on the Divine Requiem while Yi Futian was conducting a series of guerrilla warfare at will. The two cooperated so perfectly that it seemed that the 4 top figures from the Divine Prefecture could only react passively. The combination of the Divine Guqin and the Divine Requiem is truly powerful. This Guqin is the relic of Shenin the Great, integrated with the soul of the Great Emperor. I guess it can be regarded as divine weaponry from the Great Emperor, said Wang Mian. He then looked at the other 3. If this is really the best you can do, I am afraid we won't be seeing anything. More likely, we will all be defeated here and now by the sound of the Guqin. Hua Junmo, Pei Sheng, and Jiang Qingfeng were clearly aware of the point he was making. They looked at the couple playing the Guqin and saw Yi Futian's silver hair dancing in the wind while Hua Jieyu sat cross-legged, playing meticulously. If this were not a battlefield, it would be a most beautiful scene to behold, just like a painting. Boom! Rays of divine light shrouded and drowning them. In their eyes, a certain transformation was happening again. Their strengths were still climbing. The aura from each of the 4 cultivators was becoming more frightening, and their willpower was getting more aggressive, resisting the will of the divine requiem. Are they going to release their aces before the real battle? Someone whispered in amazement. It's not that they don't want to fight a decisive battle. It's just that under the sound of the guqin, they are all greatly affected. Even if they fight, they will be under someone else's control. The weakening of their own grasp over the great path is fatal. They can't break down Futian's defense, and for them to continue being submerged in this mood, it will only get worse so that their hands are forced. With the buttress from the divine power, there will invariably become stronger. Instead of being consumed by this tug of war and gradually falling into disadvantage, it is better to go all out and fight. Many people saw the situation clearly. If these four continue to fight against Futian under such conditions, eventually, their strength would be weakened. It would affect the outcome of the battle, thus weakening their positions. Under the halo of the divine power, Hua Junmo was undergoing a certain transformation. The face of a deity appeared above the firmament as Hua Junmo's figure left in a flash and levitated into the air. Strands of horrific aura penetrated through his body. It was as this force was becoming stronger. Hua Junmo himself seemed to have turned into a god. It seemed as if he was the incarnation of Haotian the Great, descending into the world, oppressing this corner of the sky with all his might. Soon, Pei Shang of Infinite Mountains and Jiang Qingfeng of the ancient royal family of Jiang also underwent some transformation. Under the lingering divine light, each one of them was like some kind of deity. Wang Mian floated high into the sky. The golden divine light enveloped the boundless void. Then, the light released from his body seemed to swallow up the infinite power between heaven and earth. As he waved his hand in the air, a piercing divine glory appeared inside his palm, and a golden divine spear manifested. It seemed to be the sharpest divine weapon in the world, but the entire great path of this space seemed to be refined by it as well. At this time, above Wang Mian, many stormy matrices were gestating above the firmament. Boom! Golden light of destruction came down as a series of terrible cracks appeared in the space. It was no longer the same attack he unleashed previously. There was a great difference in the strength of the two attacks. It's not too late to hand over the corpse of Xinjia, the great emperor. I can still let you go. Wang Mian lowered his head to look at Futian, who was down below. His tone still carried an icy arrogance, as if he was the final arbiter of this world. But Futian smiled sarcastically and retorted, "But am I not the one who has whatever it is that you want?" At the same time, when Yu Shang saw the cultivators in the void, an astonishing demonic might erupted from him. Then, a divine item flew out from him, and in an instant, that monstrous demonic will rushed straight into the sky. Chapter 2381. Mighty Battle. What monster? Everyone looked towards Yu Shang. Inside the area surrounded by demonic might, Yu Shang had donned a magnificent demonic armor, and a terrifying will of the demonic god erupted from within. Throughout the vast lands and skies, demonic might surged and roared like rolling thunder. In the void, a pair of dark, cold eyes appeared, petrifying all who dared to look at it. Demonic male. The cultivator's pupils constricted as they looked toward Yu Shang. Who was this guy? The demonic male is a gear of the demonic gods, a true divine item. As Yu Shang donned the demonic male, all of the cultivators wondered how terrifying his power would now be. As terrifying booming noises sounded, a demonic projection appeared behind Yu Shang, towering over the world like a demonic god. As the projection shrouded Yu Shang's body, it fused together with the demonic might surrounding him, as though evolving into a true demonic god. Likewise, a divine item appeared before Futian, along with a terrifying aura that erupted from it. As Xinjia, the great emperor's body, was summoned, Futian's spiritual soul detached from his body. Divine lights encircled Xinjia, the great emperor's body, before his spiritual soul gushed into it. Immediately, Xinjia, the great emperor's body, twitched, and by the time he raised his head, the horrific divine lights from his eyes made the hearts of anyone who witnessed it tremble. Are they all releasing divine items now? The cultivators' hearts pounded. In the battle just now, the four great cultivators were hampered by the sound of the Futian's guqin. They had been unable to wield their full powers. To counter that, They all released their strongest weapons, the divine items. It was equivalent to going through a metamorphosis. They were already peak-level Renhuang playing, and now they were even more powerful. It was an unequal battle, to begin with. But now that they had equipped themselves with divine items, how could the battle continue? So Futian and Yusheng no longer held back, and both drew their divine items as well. As Hua Jiyu familiarized herself with yearning, the divine Guqin, the emotions in the divine requiem were growing stronger. Even as the four great cultivators drew their divine items, the will of grief continued to infiltrate their minds and corrode their determination. They could only temporarily subdue it with divine powers. Kill. The four stopped waiting. As Wang Mian voiced something, rays of divine light that obliterated everything in its way streamed out of the golden matrix, conjuring atop his head. It was as though the divine lights rained judgment on the worlds, attempting to rain destruction upon where Futian and Hua Jiyu were. Boom! A figure descended from the skies. It was like a demonic god had arrived, coming to a stop in the air above Futian. It was Yusheng. His gaze swept across the skies high above him. Both of his eyes contained such dominating aura, it was as though anyone who saw it would lower their heads and surrender at once. It was simply unparalleled. Many demonic projections appeared in the skies, as though the demonic gods of the worlds had descended. Every single one had a terrifying aura. All of them were summoned by Yusheng. As the divine lights rained down to obliterate all living beings in their way, many of the demonic projections were crushed and destroyed, turning into dust and ash within an instant as they were unable to fend against the horrific divine lights shooting down from the matrix. "Leave me," Futian said as he raised his head to glance at where Yusheng was. Of course, he understood that Yusheng intended to protect Hua Jiyu and him, but he didn't need it. While Futian's physical body continued to sit quietly beside Hua Jiyu, the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, moved. Futian saw that horrific beam of light was blasting toward them. So with one thought, countless divine lights shot out from Shunjia, the great emperor's body, akin to mythic runes being summoned one after another. Pointing his finger ahead, countless divine lights converged instantly to form a light screen of space. All of the attacks landed on the luminous wall, yet weren't able to break it. It was as though with a casual point of his finger, Futian had created a world to block the attacks for him. Just then, the divine weapon in Wang Mian's possession struck down, the golden divine spear hitting the light screen of space. A deep, muffled thump echoed the battlefield as the light screen shattered. The golden divine spear had actually managed to pierce it. The terrifying divine lights from the spear continued the smite downward, intending to kill Futian once and for all. A light screen of obliteration engulfed the entire space, blinding anyone who witnessed it. Shunjia, the great emperor's body, flew straight up. He neither dodged nor evaded, flying directly up into the skies like a beam of light as the divine lights on him shone magnificently. He raised his hand and pointed towards the divine spear ahead as his entire body turned into a supreme divine sword, colliding with the divine light that was moving down. As the two rays of light met, terrifying gashes appeared in the space around them. "Break!" Shunjia, the great emperor, yelled. Instantly, his sword will destroyed everything in its way as his divine frame moved with unstoppable force. Wang Mian's expression turned more solemn. All of the divine lights from his worldly matrices converged onto him as if all the divine lights of the worlds had merged into one to fuse into his palm. He once again thrust the divine spear, directly colliding with Futian. The body of Shunjia, the great emperor, was like an unbreakable divine sword. As it collided with the golden divine spear, two force waves erupted from the collision. The great paths around them starting crumbling uncontrollably as they were destroyed by the shock waves. "Path obliteration," called Shunjia, the great emperor. Instantly, divine lights erupted from his body, shooting out towards the matrix patterns atop the skies. Horrifying divine lights of the sword pierced the matrix patterns, causing them to shatter one after another. An equally powerful force was exerted onto Wang Mian. He let out a muffled groan as his body was blasted into the air. Seeing this scene before them shook the divine prefecture cultivators to their core. They had heard before that Futian could unleash extreme combat prowess with the body of Shunjia, the Great Emperor. Now, they could confirm that it was no mere rumor. Wang Mian himself was an ultra-powerful Renhuang. He was peak-level Renhuang plane and even wielding a divine weapon, yet he was still repelled by Futian. Wang Mian's arm trembled. He looked at the quivering golden spear on his arm. So this was the power of path obliteration of Shunjia, the Great Emperor? When they clashed just now, it was as though his path was getting destroyed. In the meantime, in the other direction, the other high-level cultivators didn't just watch. Hua Junmo transformed into Haotian the Great and exerted his dominating might. Great palm seals appeared and moved down, covering such a vast space that it was as if it shrouded the entire world. As huge explosions echoed the air, these palm seals slammed down on Futian's physical body and on Hua Jieyu. Letting his spiritual soul leave his body to control Shunjia, the Great Emperor's body, was extremely risky. If Futian's own body were attacked and destroyed, his spiritual soul would have no physical vessel to reside in. Hua Jieyu's Guqin continued to irk and influence them. Yusheng looked high up above the skies. Boom! His body was still expanding exponentially, transforming into a colossal demonic god. Countless demonic projections around them guarded Futian and Hua Jieyu, while the demonic god he had transformed into raised his hand to slam down on the celestial skies. Supreme Demonic might flared the world as his palm collided with the Haotian Great Palm Seal. The world once again felt like it was falling apart. Great paths collapsed, and dark gashes in space swallowed everything that came close. The force was so great that even the heavenly mandate city below the skies shook. The entire body of the demonic god shined magnificently. Demonic lights flowed and turned throughout him, giving rise to unparalleled power. Instantly, violent blasts and explosions erupted from the collision, and the Great Palm Seal started exploding from the middle as cracks started appearing. As the cracks sprawled out, the Great Palm Seal collapsed uncontrollably. Chapter 2382. Heaven Tempering Divine Method. He's strong. The cultivators' hearts pounded as they witnessed Yusheng's attack. After he had donned the demonic mail, Yusheng's aura evolved. It was as though he was possessed by a demonic god. Legend had it that the demonic mail was forged from the will of a demonic god, which is why it contained the soul of the demonic god and was owned by generations of devil emperors. Now, Yusheng owned a demonic mail set, which told of his status in the devil world. Could it be that the devil emperor saw him as the heir of the devil throne? If that was the case, then this person before them could be a future devil emperor, which was an incredibly noble status. As Hua Junmo's Haotian seal was crushed, the eyes of the figure that stood in the void, towering above worlds, turned cold. He had now transformed into Haotian, yet he still wasn't able to quash Yusheng. Boom! Horrifying, deafening noises echoed the air as rays of divine lights shot out. The supreme might of Haotian reigned over the land, as if it were exerted by all worlds combined. A deep thump sounded as a celestial divine seal smote down. Countless giant palm seals fell all across the land, each of them containing terrifying divine lights. The seals engulfed the world as if they were crushing and destroying everything. This attack covered every inch of the battlefield. Even the other cultivators had to retreat to avoid being hit. The attack came straight for Yusheng. The cultivators only saw shock waves rippling from the skies. The whole thing was akin to the sounds of the demonic god. Centering around him, countless projections of demonic gods spawned, encircling the colossal demonic god which he had transformed into. As a demonic blade coiled by horrifying demonic will appeared in Yusheng's hand, harrowing demonic might surged and roared. It seemed that the projections of the demonic gods of the worlds resonated and synced as they simultaneously raised their demonic blades. Infinite demonic lights converged into Yusheng's demonic blade, causing it to expand. Demonic god wielded the blade with both hands and slashed out, splitting the skies. In an instant, the countless projections of the demonic gods struck out with their demonic blades in perfect synchronization to collide with the falling Haotian Great Palm Seal. At the same time, their demonic wills converged onto the demonic blade at the center. Tens of thousands of demons resonated as the demonic gods of the worlds attacked as one. When the blade slashed forward, an endlessly large demonic god projection appeared atop the celestial skies. This projection slashed out demonic light as well, which fused into the demonic blade and cleaved the skies. At this instant, terrifying cracks appeared throughout the world, from below the skies to all the way up high. Everywhere it passed, the great palm seals were torn into fragments. Finally, the blade struck the sky-shrouding Futian great palm seal. As terrifying lights of obliteration erupted, the palm seal was torn apart by the dark storm of demon blades. With a flare of horrifying demonic lights, the divine seal was destroyed and split in half. Even more terrifyingly, the demonic light continued to move upwards, splitting up the skies and hacking apart the projection of Futian. It was as if the sky was split in half, causing a fault line to appear. Futian the Great's projection seemed to be split open as well, and only the demonic light and the crack spanning the skies remained. All of the cultivators' gazes turned toward that slash in the celestial skies. Their hearts pounded as they witnessed what was happening. At this moment, it was as if the entire space had gone silent and everything was frozen in time. Suddenly, atop the celestial skies, bits of blood dripped down, caught by the eyes of the cultivators. It seemed that Futian was bleeding. With the eruption of a divine light, Futian the Great's projection disintegrated and dissipated into the air. A figure appeared atop the celestial skies. It was Hua Junmo, but now a wound appeared on his forehead. His aura became exceedingly frail, and his face was pale. Obviously, he was severely wounded and had to retreat from the battle. One slash. The hearts of the cultivators pounded as they looked toward the demonic god projection formed by Yusheng. Was this really that seventh-plan demonic cultivator they had seen before? Equipped with the demonic mail, he had become so powerful and dominating. His blade cleaved the celestial skies, directly opening it up. Even now, the crack was still present in the air, and storms of obliteration continued to seep out from the dark cracks in space. The current Devil Emperor that reigned over the Devil world had dominated it many years ago. He was known as an unmatched genius, creating several demonic arts on his own. Some say that amongst all of the great emperors today, the Devil Emperor was likely the one who could wield the most legendary techniques. In the generation after him, likely only Donghuang the Great, another unparalleled genius, could compare to him. Now, it seemed that Yusheng had inherited quite a few powers from the Devil Emperor. This scene also shocked the other three great cultivators. At their level, it was very difficult for them to attack at the same time, as one person's attack would occupy the entire battlefield and leave no space for anybody else. If they did attack simultaneously, the attacks would collide and interfere with one another. Their cultivation levels were simply too powerful, and their attack range too wide, leaving them no choice but to take turns. But Yusheng wounded Hua Junmo with just one slash, which led to the other three cultivators reassessing Yusheng's level. Then there was Yi Futian, who blocked Wang Mian's attack using the body of Shunjia, the Great Emperor. He clearly hadn't used his full power. While Hua Jieyu was playing the Divine Requiem on the side, in actuality, she, too, was remarkably powerful. The battle was now 3-on-3, and the differences between their planes seemed to be neglectable. At this point, Wang Mian and the two other ancient god clan cultivators seemed to have no advantage over Yi Futian's group whatsoever. After Hua Junmo was gravely wounded, Pei Sheng and Jiang Qingfeng stopped attacking rashly. The three powerful cultivators stood atop the skies, looking down upon Yi Futian, Yusheng, and Hua Jieyu. Yi Futian and Yusheng each took a different position. Between them was Hua Jieyu, on the ground, still peacefully playing the guqin. As the guqin continued to sound, the will of grief of the Divine Requiem grew stronger. Actually, with the current 6 cultivators remaining, Hua Jieyu could engage in battle without playing the Divine Requiem. The body of Shunjia the Great is right here. Come get it. A voice came out from inside Shunjia the Great's body. It was speaking to Wang Mian, who stood atop the void. Since the beginning, Wang Mina wanted Yi Futian to hand over the divine frame of Shunjia the Great, and he even had the audacity to say that he would give Yi Futian a chance. Now, as Yi Futian's spiritual soul had entered the body of Shunjia the Great for the battle, Even if it would create a huge burden for him, he had to make Wang Mian pay the price. Hearing Futian's words, Wang Mian's gaze turned into an extremely sharp blade as he once again raised the golden spear. But this time, his iris morphed into something different. They were no longer his own eyes, but turned into a pair of divine eyes. As Futian raised his head to look toward Wang Mian, a supreme force erupted from Wang Mian's body. Just like before, matrices appeared one after another atop the celestial skies, but this time, their auras were even more terrifying and powerful. Divine lights flew out from Wang Mian and merged with the matrices. Then, Wang Mian raised his arm to point at the skies. His petrifying divine gaze looked toward the skies as well. The matrices intertwined and intersected as they started to fuse together, transforming into an endlessly huge pattern, swallowing all of the great path powers of the worlds. As these horrific patterns appeared, all of the powers in the vast space were reeled within. They assimilated to make it stronger, eventually forming a terrifying, sky-smelting whirlpool of divine powers. All of the high-level divine prefecture cultivators' hearts pounded as they witnessed the scene above them. That was Tianyin, the Great's heaven-tempering divine method. Chapter 2383, The Decisive Strike. Futian looked up into the sky. With the support he derived from the divine power, the firmament turned into a divine matrix. Countless divine lights wove together, tempering the power of the great path in the heavens, merging into a divine matrix. In the vast and boundless space, divine lights shot down as sizzling was heard. Those cultivators from the divine prefecture, who were below, wore a serious and heavy expression as they released the defensive power of the great path to block the divine light that came down on them. The heaven-tempering divine method tempers the power of the great path in the heavens and turns it into a divine matrix. Its power is enough to slay all enemies. The cultivators from divine prefecture secretly marveled. The heaven-tempering divine method had been created by Tianyin the Great. It could be used to cast matrices, weapon-making, as well as kill others. In weapon-making, it was capable of the most powerful matrices, and in killing, it was also capable of the most horrific offensive techniques. Any areas covered by this divine method would be annihilated. According to legend, Tianyin the Great created the heaven-tempering divine method when he was still at his peak. Its power was enough to shroud an entire space until the entire world was covered entirely. With a single thought, everyone in a realm could be slaughtered instantaneously. Its prowess was most dreadful. And now, Wang Mian was releasing the heaven-tempering divine method. Clearly, its power would be no match to the one released by Tianyin the Great back then, but the power it was able to exert was plenty terrifying. He stood under the heaven-tempering divine matrix, raising the golden divine spear in his hand. The divine power surged into the matrix so that those countless rays of divine light seemed to fall with divine power as well. "Let me help you," said a voice. It was none other than Jiang Qingfeng who offered up his help to Wang Mian. Yes. Wang Mian nodded. This heaven-tempering divine method could temper the power of the great path in the heavens. If Jiang Qingfeng was willing to cooperate with him, he could temper his power and increase the magnitude of the heaven-tempering divine method. "I'll help you too," someone else piped up. It was Pei Shang. He walked over, and the three of them stood together under the heaven-tempering divine matrix. These two gave up their own separate attacks and urged their divine power to flow into the divine matrix. In an instant, the power of the heaven-tempering divine method seemed to multiply significantly again. The divine light that fell became even more radiant, and it appeared as if it was cutting through space. In addition, the divine light that was falling had become more pervasive until it seemed that it was covering heaven entirely. Everyone watched the heaven-tempering divine method increase in power and felt the horror that it produced. Wang Mian, Pei Shang, and Jiang Qingfeng had finally joined forces. These three major cultivators had gathered all the power at their disposal and poured it into the heaven-tempering divine method to expand the prowess of this divine method. Presently, the heaven-tempering divine method was way more powerful than when it had been urged on by Wang Mian alone. The sound of sizzle came out with endless divine light falling. The vast spatial world was completely isolated, and even divided into numerous segments that were completely separate. However, many cultivators were in this space. No matter how many people there were, they would have to withstand this attack just the same. Nobody could possibly escape the attack of this divine method. Yi Futian, Yu Sheng, and Hua Jieyu were standing below. They would not be able to evade this attack either. All they could do was to resist this force head-on. The cultivators from Tianyan City raised their heads to look at the battlefield up high. In this battle, none of the principalities from the Divine Prefecture participated. Not even when the Vajra Divine Child and Hua Junmo were severely injured did they choose to intervene. After all, at this level, peak Renhuang realm, they could bear any consequences as a result of their own actions as long as they were not dead. For everyone, this was an extremely rare battle, regardless of the outcome. Besieged by the heaven-tempering divine method, would Yi Futian manage to withstand it with the help of Shunjia the Great Emperor? And what about Yu Sheng in the demonic male? Or Hua Jieyu, who was playing the Guqin? All three of them were within range of the onslaught. In that space were many phantom shadows of the demon gods summoned by Yu Sheng. When the slaughtering divine light fell down, sharp piercing sounds were heard. Those phantom shadows were shredded, annihilated, and then dissipated under that countless divine light. They vanished into nothingness, leaving absolutely no trace. All around Yu Sheng lingered a terrible blade will, which turned into a light screen, shielding his body. Those incoming attacks fell on the light screen, emitting shrieking sounds, but could not tear it apart. Around Yi Futian, the same was true. A sword screen appeared, surrounding his body to shield him from the falling divine light. Meanwhile, Hua Jieyu in the area below was still playing the divine melody, Yi Futian's physical body next to her. When the slaughtering light came down and approached the area where she was, an astonishing force appeared. It seemed to solidify the space. A vacuum was forming around them. At this moment, this battlefield seemed a little strange. Everyone seemed to stand there without moving, but they all understood that the situation at hand was extremely dangerous. It might be the decisive moment when a clear outcome would emerge. In the silent space, there was nothing but the slaughtering divine light that rained down upon them. The cultivators from Divine Prefecture watched quietly. They were wondering if Yi Futian and his companions could overcome this divine matrix created by the joint force of the three cultivators as they worked together. They were trying to create an expanded heaven-tempering divine method. If it could not be neutralized, it was very probable that Yi Futian's party of three would suffer grave injuries. Wang Mian lowered his head to glance at the three people below while his arm was still raised. When he looked up again at the divine matrix, his figure rushed directly into the matrix. Suddenly, a boundless and massive phantom appeared in the midst of the matrix. It was none other than Wang Mian's face. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A more horrific slaughtering light descended like the light of extinction. In an instant, deep and terrible fissures appeared below. Suddenly, golden divine light and the pitch-dark crevices interweaved, finding their murderous way to Yi Futian and his little party of three. When this attack landed, it was as if all the heavens were about to be silenced. Be careful, some cultivator from the Divine Prefecture cautioned from below. When such a horrific attack came crashing down, even those further down were under its influence. All those who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path were busy gathering their powerful forces to protect themselves. As strong as they were, the slightest complacency would allow this attack to breach their defense. At this moment, the heaven-tempering divine method was already the type of attack capable of slaughtering cultivators who had survived the first divine tribulation of the Great Path. Boom! At this moment, Yu Sheng took a sudden step forward. That invincible demon god appeared directly above Yi Futian. It was as if it was blocking on top of him. In case that attack came blasting down, he would be the first line of defense. A boundless and massive demon god appeared, standing tall between heaven and earth. Numerous phantoms of the demon gods filled the sky again, but this time they were illusions only. However, all these phantoms resonated solemnly, as if responding to the call of the demonic lord. All around Yu Sheng, actual figures of the demon gods appeared. It was as if they were superimposed over his body. They simultaneously unleashed their demonic blades as well. They slashed toward the firmament at the same time when Yusheng himself also unleashed the strike. All these incomparably powerful attacks gathered together, turning into one blade, slashing towards the upper sky. Yusheng's body moved with the light of the blade, trailing upward. When Futian looked up and saw this, he understood what Yusheng was trying to accomplish. The demonic blade traversed the sky down, moving to the bottom. It split open the space and aimed at Wang Mian. Wang Mian had already merged into the divine matrix at this time as he surveyed the grounds below. Suddenly, the divine light erupted from where he was, and those annihilating divine light fell to strike Yusheng where he was. In an instant, Yusheng seemed to be submerged completely in that destructive light. Only the demonic blade remained, slashing high into the sky, colliding with the light. A terrifying destructive storm swept into the surrounding space now. The demon god that was transformed by Yusheng let out a low growl as his blade continued its upward motion. It split those rays of divine light. However, that devastating demonic blade began to crack, then began to break off inch by inch. Though the blade was broken, the blade will was still intact. That figure of the demon god, perched high above the firmament, was extremely domineering. The sword slashed all the way high above the sky, approaching the divine matrix. At this moment, Pei Shang and Jiang Qingfeng also looked down where Yusheng was. They were already under the spell of the divine requiem, and their will had been greatly destabilized. Coupled with their efforts to urge all their power to pour into the divine matrix, they had no more strength to spare to carry out an additional attack on Yusheng. But even so, there was still a powerful will that erupted from both of them in a last-ditch effort to stop Yusheng from continuing his way up. But at this moment, a figure appeared high above the sky next to Yusheng. It was as if it had emerged out of thin air. This figure was extraordinarily striking with unparalleled beauty. It was Hua Jieyu. At this moment, Hua Jieyu's beauty was ravishing. Her black hair flew in the wind. Her gaze swept towards Pei Shang and Jiang Qingfeng as a tremendous telekinetic power rushed into their minds. Simultaneously, a frightening force covered this entire area until the space seemed to be in a state of tranquility. What's happening? Many looked up, then down at the figure who was playing the divine guqin. Yonder, Hua Jieyu was still there. It seemed that an avatar of her had appeared above the sky. Somehow, that avatar seemed more like Hua Jieyu, rather than just a phantom of her. Her soul is out of her body, some cultivator whispered. Hua Jieyu had managed to appear above the sky, leveraging the out-of-body technique in order to lend Yusheng a hand. Boom! Yusheng's blade continued to move upward. The divine light that blasted down was shattered, but Yusheng's blade became shorter as well. Finally, it was completely broken. The blade was entirely exhausted, wiped out bit by bit. Above the divine matrix, Wang Mian's face was icy cold, and murderous intent flashed through his eyes. However, at this precise moment, a light appeared in the area below Yusheng. It was a boundless and brilliant divine light. A figure passed by him and appeared right beneath the divine matrix. The figure that appeared was the divine body of Shunjia, the great emperor. The moment he appeared, Hua Jieyu disappeared as her spiritual soul returned to her body. In an instant, she returned below to continue playing the divine guqin. It was as if none of this had ever happened. The strike from Yusheng was not a real attempt to break through the divine matrix. He was merely clearing the way for Futian. He had cleft a path that brought them closer to the heart of the divine matrix so that Futian could reach there without expending much effort. He could then reserve all his strength on the divine matrix itself. Buzz! After the blade was broken, divine light sprinkled upon Yusheng but was blocked by the demon male. Nevertheless, he was slammed into the ground below. The body of Shunjia, the great emperor, now replaced him in his position. An unparalleled divine aurora burst out from his body. The flesh and blood body of Shunjia, the great emperor, then turned into a sword and continued forward. This body itself was an imperial weapon, the actual physical body of a great emperor. Surrounded by countless runes, the whole world now turned into a sword, striking at the heart of the divine matrix. Yusheng and Hua Jieyu had cleared the way for him. It broke through a few rays of light. The divine body rushed into the divine matrix, colliding with it. It was exactly at the position where Wang Mian was. Underneath, all the cultivators from the divine prefecture stared at the scene playing out in the void. Their hearts throbbed. They were beyond shocked. Did he mean to rush into the divine matrix with the body of Shunjia, the great emperor? What a terrible clash it was. At this moment, a muffled sound came from the sky. Radiating from the site of the collision, a most devastating storm rampaged between heaven and earth. Even Jiang Qingfeng and Pei Shang were knocked backward. At the core of the collision, an astonishing force had exploded. At this moment, everyone inside the heavenly mandate city saw a divine light sweep toward the surrounding heaven and earth. The entire sky above the heavenly mandate city lit up. A terrible rumbling sound was heard, and that divine matrix above the firmament was collapsing, shattering, and breaking apart continuously. Soon, the divine matrix that shrouded that corner of the sky disintegrated. Light penetrated through heaven and earth in that central area, and another ray of light blasted higher into the sky. Boom! Another loud boom, and the divine matrix crumbled. The air of destruction raged as countless people focused on the sky above. The body of the Xinjia, the great emperor, stood there, and it was precisely this divine body that had forced its way into the divine matrix. Wang Mian, at this moment, appeared above the firmament. He was still holding the golden divine spear, but let out a muffled groan as blood seeped from the corners of his mouth. His face was as white as a sheet. His body was trembling ever so slightly. Clearly, he was grievously injured. "It's broken," everyone secretly exclaimed. Incredible shock took hold of their hearts. The heaven-tempering divine method had been broken. The body of Shunjia, the great emperor, was like an immortal entity and had directly penetrated the divine matrix and broke it down by brute force. In this battle, many of the top figures from the ancient god clan had joined hands, but they failed to take down Yi Futian's team of 3 and had been defeated soundly. Presently, even though Pei Shang and Jiang Qingfeng were still operational with the ability to continue fighting, it was almost impossible for them to defeat Yi Futian's team of 3. It was obvious from the developments so far that none of them had the ability to defeat Yi Futian on their own. Neither of them could overpower Yi Futian, who had resorted to the divine body of Shunjia, the great emperor, to augment his combat effectiveness. They weren't even in the position to defeat Yu Shang or Hua Jieyu. Above the void, the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, was still there, looking at Wang Mian, who was high in the sky. The two of them stood there like two statues. Neither moved. In fact, Yi Futian himself was also under great pressure. After all, this was the body of a deity, not of his own. Wang Mian stared at the divine body below. The flesh of Shunjia, the great emperor, deserved its reputation. After all, it had successfully penetrated the divine matrix and dismantled it. Beneath him, a terrifying aura headed high into the sky, which was frowned upon by many. The cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy, as well as Yi Futian and his companion above the sky, had a slightly disturbed look in their eyes. Obviously, they felt those tyrannical auras that came from below. Although the confrontation in the void had ended, Yi Futian and his companions successfully blocked the united efforts from several top figures in the divine prefecture. However, their opponents seemed to have no intention of stopping. This battle was not over yet. Chapter 2385. Exchange? Yi Futian lowered his head. Terrifying light shone in his pupils. He looked at the cultivators of the divine prefecture down below and questioned them. "The sparring that you so wished has ended. What else do you plan to do?" Yu Shang, in his demonic god form, similarly stared at the cultivators below. His jet-black demonic eyes were frightening. The demonic cultivators who came along with him immediately rose to the sky and scanned across the space. This scene caused the cultivators from the divine prefecture to reveal strange expressions. Yu Shang and Yi Futian were very close. They were sworn brothers who had been through various life-or-death situations together. If the cultivators chose to attack Yi Futian, they would most likely face Yu Shang. The cultivators from the devil world might intervene in the battle directly. Moreover, Yu Shang seemed to have an extraordinary status in the devil world. The crowd could deduce many things based on their battle just now. Yu Shang mastered a few magnum opuses of the Devil Emperor. Besides that, he controlled the demonic male, and had the will of the demonic gods. Judging from these, they could tell Yu Shang's status in the devil world. He might be more than just a direct disciple of the devil emperor. Perhaps Yu Shang was one of the potential successors chosen by him. If Yu Shang had a strong influence in the devil world, he might even be capable of mobilizing their troops. If that were the case, then even the top forces of the divine prefecture would not be able to withstand him and his army. Ren Huangyi, you regard yourself as a cultivator of the divine prefecture, and you have said that we should unite to fight against the forces of the other worlds. However, are you in cahoots with the cultivators from the devil world now? Said someone from the crowd. The speaker had purposely hidden his exact location as he was afraid of offending Yi Futian and his alliances. Nobody knew who started this rumor of Yi Futian being in cahoots with the cultivators from the devil world. Yi Futian scanned the crowd below with a cold gaze. Had these cultivators from the divine prefecture actually been treating him as one of them? They joined forces to attack him, and they showed no hesitation in killing him. From the direction where the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy were, a cold voice sounded. All of you came to the Heavenly Mandate Academy, and the top figures from the divine prefecture joined forces to attack the college chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, who is but a 7th-tier Renhuang. Did you consider the unity of the divine prefecture when you committed such a shameless act? College chief and Yu Shang are good friends, to begin with. There's no such thing as being in cahoots. All of you are good at victim blaming. The top figures from the divine prefecture have lost this battle. If you are still unwilling to let it go, then attack us as you desire. You do not need to find any more baseless excuses to justify your actions. When the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy heard these words, they put on cold expressions. They were all angry. The cultivators from the divine prefecture were indeed pushing things too far. Up until this point, they were still looking for excuses for their overbearing actions. A chuckle could be heard. It was actually from the direction where the cultivators of the West Imperial Palace stood. Shi Qiao said with a smile, "Today, we have all witnessed that Ren Huangye's temperament is exceptional among that of the cultivators of the divine prefecture. The divine prefecture is fortunate to have such a talented figure. He will surely become a pillar of the prefecture. Ren Huangye has proven himself in this battle. There's no need to persist in fighting. Everyone, why don't we stop here?" When the members of the divine prefecture heard Shi Qiao's words, their gazes turned somewhat cold. This Shi Qiao was a schemer to speak out for Yi Futian now. Before this, she also agreed to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. Yi Futian had also approved her request. When they saw Yi Futian's terrifying potential, the West Imperial Palace must have wanted to win him over. Yet another large group of cultivators arrived. They were the cultivators from the Lost Clan who rushed here from the neighboring Shunny continent. They stood high in the sky and looked at the cultivators from the divine prefecture. One of them said, "What happened today is exactly the same as what happened to the Lost Clan before this. Now, the Lost Clan has forged an alliance with the Heavenly Mandate Academy, and all of us are part of the divine prefecture. If other forces from the divine prefecture still can't accept us, then we have no choice but to fight it out." The cultivators of the Lost Clan and the Heavenly Mandate Academy were now in the same boat. If something bad were to happen to Yi Futian, the cultivators of the divine prefecture would similarly exclude the Lost Clan. When the cultivators from the divine prefecture saw this scene, their determination to get rid of Yi Futian wavered. They all had different thoughts. Currently, Yi Futian and his alliances were much weaker than the collective forces of the divine prefecture, but the latter was not of a single mind. It was impossible for all of them to attack at once. After all, they belonged to different factions. If the forces from the divine prefecture attacked separately, they would most likely have a difficult time going against the Lost Clan. Moreover, them attacking Yi Futian now posed the risk of them offending Yu Shang. Therefore, the cultivators from the divine prefecture were all contemplating what would happen if they declared war on Yi Futian now. What would Princess Donghuang think of this incident? Right then, an extremely domineering aura churned, and divine light radiated. Everyone looked down below. They noticed a man dressed in long golden robes standing in a corner. His aura was frightening, and it covered this part of the sky within a split second. It enveloped the entire space. "He is the lord of the Tianyan city and the head of Wang family," someone said. The hearts of the crowd trembled when they saw him. He was undoubtedly a giant-level figure in the divine prefecture and one of the few who stood at the peak. He was at the strongest level beneath the great emperor level. He was a super cultivator who had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. Hence, everyone could sense his sharp aura as soon as he unleashed it. The Tianyin domain gained its fame due to Tianyin the Great, one of the great emperors in the past. The Tianyin city was the center of the domain. Even the domain chief's manor had to give face to the cultivators of the Tianyin city. This ancient god clan was definitely the absolute rule of the Tianyin domain. They had the final say in the domain. The Tianyin city had high status because they were the top force in manufacturing weapons. All the cultivators of the Tianyin city were proud. One could tell based on Wang Mian's attitude just now. The lord of the Tianyin city was certainly an authoritative figure in the divine prefecture. Right now, he had actually stepped out to meddle in this affair. Things were getting more and more interesting. With his status, he most likely feared no one. Wang Mian, stand down, commanded the lord of the Tianyin city while looking at the sky above. Immediately, Wang Mian descended and stood in front of the lord with his head down. Even though Wang Mian was a Runhuang at the peak of the 9th tier, he showed no sign of arrogance when faced with the lord. The lord was the ruler of Tianyin city. The lord didn't look at Wang Mian. Instead, he raised his head and gazed at Futian and Yusheng. He had observed the entire battle just now. Even though the flesh of Shunjia, the great emperor, was but a corpse, it was the divine body of a god. It could actually penetrate the heaven-tempering divine matrix and forcefully stop the divine method. Most likely, a super-divine matrix was hidden in this divine body. The lord of the Tianyin city said, "Little friend Yi, Wang Mian has acted recklessly before this. But the Tianyin city is indeed very interested in the body of Shunjia, the great emperor. Can you lend me the sacred remains of Shunjia, the great emperor? I'll surely return it to you. The Tianyin city is willing to exchange it with you using imperial arms." His words caused the hearts of the rest of the cultivators to skip a beat. Exchanging the sacred remains with imperial arms. The lord of the Tianyin city was very open about the fact that his force owned imperial arms. As the top weapon-forging force in the divine prefecture and the successor of the teachings of a great emperor who was good at weapon forging, the Tianyin city was indeed the force with the largest amount of divine arms. However, was the value of imperial arms equivalent to that of the sacred remains of Shunjia, the great emperor? Imperial arms were divine arms that were infused with the will of the great emperors. If the weapon contained a strong will, it was indeed very powerful, and its value was no less than that of the sacred remains. Futian lowered his head to look at the crowd beneath him. So, it seemed like they were forcing him to yield with another approach now that they had failed in their attempt to plunder his treasures. How could he possibly lend them the sacred remains? Who would lend their divine items to others? Most likely, none in the world would do so. The request itself was something outrageous. In terms of their value, the sacred remains of Shunjia, the great emperor, were definitely more valuable than imperial arms. The former contained insights which would help the cultivators in cultivating. It contained the secrets of cultivation of Shunjia, the great emperor, which would aid the cultivators in continually comprehending how the great emperor refined his divine body. This was also the reason why the cultivators of Tianyin city insisted on obtaining the sacred remains. They desired to unveil all the secrets hidden in the sacred remains. They wanted to try duplicating the recipe and using it for manufacturing powerful weapons. Hence, it was impossible for Futian to exchange the sacred remains with them. Aside from the concern that the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, was far more valuable than ordinary imperial arms, even if Futian truly agreed to their request, there was still uncertainty of whether or not the other party would really exchange it with real imperial arms. Futian rejected the lord directly, saying, "I have resonated with the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, and it can be used to improve my combat ability. Naturally, I won't use it for an exchange. I hope Senior can understand." The lord of Tianyin city stared at the figure high above the sky, surrounded by dazzling divine light with a sharp gaze. A formless might loomed over this part of the sky. The lord of Tianyin city was a mighty existence. He unleashed his might, and everyone in the entire heavenly mandate city felt a suffocating pressure. Even Yi Futian's spiritual soul that was shielded within the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, felt an extremely powerful aura suppressing him. "What if I insist on having it?" said the Lord of Tianyan City. His aura turned even more menacing as divine light covered the entire space. It was as though he could attack Yi Futian right away with a mere thought. A momentary silence followed right after he said this. Many cultivators from the top forces of the divine prefecture secretly rejoiced. Before this, they were worried that no one would take the lead to attack Yi Futian for fear of offending the devil world. However, the Lord of Tianyan City paid no heed to such concern. Besides that, his status was indeed extraordinary. He was capable of forcefully seizing the sacred corpse. Yi Futian felt a powerful pressure acting on him. The halo of ancient characters shone above the divine body and withstood the pressure. Yi Futian's gaze was as sharp as a blade as he stared at the Lord of Tianyan City, who was standing down below. He said, "Senior seems to be overconfident." "Am I?" The Lord of Tianyan City cast a glance at the sky. A beam of divine light directly pierced the space. The rest of them couldn't even catch a glimpse of the trajectory of this divine light. Yi Futian felt an immense sense of danger. Rumble. Yi Futian's aura burst forth as the great path roared in the divine body. A terrifying sword will slash downwards without any hesitation. However, a beam of light shot straight up. With a loud thud, the sacred corpse was sent flying backward from the shockwave. Yi Futian's spiritual soul, which was residing inside the corpse, shook violently. The crowd witnessed a beam of golden divine light penetrating the space. Deep and frightening fissures appeared between the two of them. Divine light merged into the dark fissures. Powerful figures such as the Lord of Tianyan City could shatter the stability of the space with a casual attack, causing fissures to form in space. With a mere thought, his divine light could directly penetrate the space and land on his opponent, regardless of how far apart they were. Even with the support of the divine body of Shunjia, the great emperor, Yi Futian was no match for the Lord since their cultivation planes were too far apart. With the help of the divine body, Yi Futian could defeat powerful cultivators who had survived the first tribulation of the Great Path. However, he was still somewhat helpless when faced with cultivators at the level of the Lord of Tianyan City. Yi Futian's spiritual soul, which was inside the sacred corpse, shook violently. Yu Shang and Hua Jieyu came up beside him. "I'm all right," said Yi Futian while shaking his head. The two of them rested their worries when they heard him say this. They then looked at the Lord of Tianyan City with extremely cold gazes. A tremendous killing intent burned in their gazes. The Lord of Tianyan City stepped in midair and traversed upwards. However, right at this moment, a silhouette appeared in front of him. Demonic might churned and roared from this figure. He was frightening. He was definitely a top figure from the devil world. The aura of this demonic cultivator was alarming, but he appeared somewhat old. The Lord of Tianyan City was trying to figure out the other party's identity based on his appearance. Cultivators at such a level were rare in various worlds. They would at least be able to recognize each other by name. Even if they hadn't met each other in person before, they would at least have heard of the other party. By right, the Lord would know of the existence of such a figure from the devil world. However, the Lord of Tianyan City didn't really care about the person's identity before him. He himself was one of the top existences in the divine prefecture. Only cultivators at the great emperor level could make him fearful. A cultivator from the devil world is actually lending aid to a cultivator from the original realm, questioned the Lord of Tianyan City. The aura of the demonic cultivator was imposing. It formed an absolute domain in the surroundings, inhibiting the Lord from attacking Yi Futian and the rest. Who is he? The cultivators from the divine prefecture also looked at this demonic cultivator. With his old age, he did not seem to be one of the demon sages or devil generals from the devil world. They had never heard of his existence before. The cultivators revealed contemplative expressions. Could it be that this demonic cultivator was a powerful existence from the previous generation? In the history of the cultivation world, there have been countless prominent figures. The names of many of these figures had long been lost to the annals of history. However, it did not mean that they were no longer present. The higher a cultivator reached in terms of cultivation, the more they understood that there were still many unknown cultivators, as well as powerful figures cultivating in seclusion out there in the world. They were all hidden from the world and unknown to all. Divine light radiated, and the heavens and earth roared furiously. Frightening divine phenomena appeared behind the Lord of Tianyin City. A gigantic pattern appeared, and countless divine arms surged out from within it. It was as though each of these divine arms was the most powerful killing weapon in the world. "Go!" commanded the Lord of Tianyin City. In an instant, the space seemed to collapse and shatter. Endless divine light pierced through the heavens and earth, charging towards the demonic cultivator. The crowd saw frightening cracks appear and rampage the space. However, right then, a terrifying spiral appeared behind the elder. Demonic might filled the sky. It was like a menacing black hole that consumed all powers. Even the cracks in space were being swept into it. The divine arms that were charging towards him were immediately consumed by the black hole. They shot straight into it. The black hole was deep and appeared to be bottomless. The eyes of the elder from the devil world also became black holes. When he looked at the Lord of Tianyin City, he appeared to even consume the latter's will. An extremely sharp aura burst forth from the body of the Lord of Tianyin City. His gaze was frightening. Endless divine light shot out from his pupils as they locked gazes. It was him. The Lord of Tianyin City felt his heart tremble as he recalled someone. This old monster had actually not died yet. When some of the elders of the divine prefecture saw this scene, they seemed to figure something out. Their expressions changed slightly. This old monster from the devil world was actually still alive. Chapter 2387. The Lost Clan Joins the Battle. This elderly cultivator from the devil world was an ancient demon renowned in the devil world for his ruthless brutality and killings. He was known as the Tunshan Demon Overlord. He was feared by countless powerful cultivators. Even in the devil world, he was dreaded and revered. This devil's hands are stained with the blood of countless individuals. He had devoured several Renhuang-level cultivators, including ultra-powerful individuals, to develop himself. The demonic art he'd cultivated was also fundamentally evil and dominating. Once, when many in the devil world joined forces to eliminate him, it was said that countless had died in that battle, yet he still managed to escape. People continued to chase after him. Some said he was already dead. After disappearing for many years, no one thought he would now be working for the Devil Imperial Palace. This old devil was famous even before the current Devil Emperor. Come to think of it, it was likely the current Devil Emperor, an unparalleled great being, who subjugated him and incorporated him into the Devil Emperor's own force, not allowing him to show himself all this while. After so many years, he was still stuck at the same cultivation level, unable to break through the final barrier. It seemed that this hurdle was still the ultimate mountain that he couldn't climb over. More importantly, a being like that had been deployed by the Devil Emperor to protect Yushang. One could see how important Yushang was to the Devil Emperor. It's likely that old Demon Tunshan's power level was on par with the three great demon sages. A demon sage, or even a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, would have to lower their heads to greet him. After all, just think about how many demon sages there were in total. This meant that Yushang's status in the devil world could be even higher than what they had initially thought. I didn't think I would be able to meet a demon overlord from thousands of years ago. Since I've met you now, I have to experience your power for myself, the Lord of the Tianyin City said. The mythical phenomenon that was appearing behind him turned more terrifying. At the same time, he asked, still not attacking, are you guys planning on just watching? The other cultivators, who were at the top echelons of the divine prefecture, looked toward Futian after hearing the Lord of Tianyin City. With old demon Tunshan here, even though the Lord of Tianyin City was incredibly powerful, it was unlikely that he could end the battle quickly. In order to capture Futian, they would have to join in. Bong! As a blaring sound echoed the air. A figure walked forward as a supremely dominating golden light shot out from him, covering an enormous, vast space. It was the Vajra region lord. His divine lights deluged the skies, shooting toward Futian. From another position, the lord of Haotian clan stepped forward as well. With several other overlord cultivators, they all took one step forward. Someone said, I'm afraid Renhuang, you will have to explain his connection with the devil world. Given Yu Shang's status in the devil world and how Yi Futian is said to have been friends with him since young, there's probably some secrets about Yi Futian's origin. We would like to know what this secret is, another person said. It seemed that the high-level cultivators present had found an excuse to intervene. As these apex cultivators walked forward, one could imagine how terrifying their auras were. Even with the power of Shunjia, the great emperor's body, Yi Futian still felt a suffocating feeling. Sikongnan and the other Lost Clan cultivators quickly blocked him. Just then, Yi Futian turned into a beam of light. Shunjia the Great's body dashed straight into the clouds and continued flying toward the skies high above. If he were to really battle against cultivators of this level, any move could cause the collapse of the Great Path. Even though they were already at a high altitude, engaging in battle straight away would still cause damage to the heavenly mandate realm, creating a calamity for them. The Lost Clan cultivators followed Yi Futian and flew into the skies as well. The overlords of the various factions glanced up and stepped up as well. Their expressions remained emotionless. Soon, up high in the sky, Yi Futian and the others seemed to have almost left the heavenly mandate realm. They were in the stratosphere outside of the Dominion, a nearly infinite space. Yi Futian stood there, and the Lost Clan cultivators stood around him in various positions. Terrifying auras started to erupt from all of them. Figures akin to that of ancient gods appeared one after another in the limitless void, towering over the celestial skies. There seemed to be some sort of resonance between them. For a time, a supreme aura streamed down from the celestial skies, forcing all of the cultivators who were chasing over to stop in their tracks and look up into the sky. Bind. As the voice sounded, divine lights inundated the skies. There were projections of the ancient gods in every direction atop the celestial skies. It was as if they were turning into a fortress, covering part of the world, spanning millions of miles. What appeared in the sky was incredibly magnificent. In the boundless void, an endlessly large world of seals appeared. Moreover, each of these seals had been formed by an ancient god. Battle matrix of the rocks. The hearts of the cultivators, dashing upward, trembled. With the ancient gods resonating, their might exerted great pressure upon the skies. Within it, the cultivators all sensed a supreme aura. Just then, the sound of a guqin echoed out from within the battle matrix, and the cultivators' expressions changed. They raised their heads and saw that inside the matrix, a figure sat cross-legged. It was Yi Futian. Before him was the divine guqin, which Hua Jieyu had returned to him. The will of the great emperor erupted from him. He had pushed his own will to its fullest potential as he played the guqin. The piece wasn't that powerful, but it had a unique magical effect. By following the rhythm of the guqin, it led to a resonance between the will of the cultivators inside the battle matrix of the rocks. For a time, the divine prefecture cultivators could feel the aura of the battle matrix continuing to strengthen. The power of the resonance was growing. They frowned at what they sensed. Amongst the cultivators of the Lost Clan, they were already the most powerful beings in the Lost Clan. These were individuals who had overcome the second layer of the divine tribulation of the Great Path. There were also some who had overcome the first layer. These apex cultivators joined forces to forge the battle matrix of the rocks and resonated in the process as if merging into one, indistinct from each other. It wouldn't be difficult to imagine how powerful their auras were. The Vajra Lord put his hands together instantly. A terrifying sound echoed within the world. Atop his body, an endlessly large Vajra ancient god appeared, and it continued to expand in size. The ancient god emitted a magnificent golden sheen all across his body, containing an aura that felt like ultra-sharp blades. The Vajra ancient god's arms moved. Instantly, countless arms appeared all around the battlefield. They simultaneously struck out towards various positions in the celestial skies, covering every area of the battle matrix of the rocks. At that instant, it was as if physical space was about to explode and shatter under the pressure of such a terrifying attack. Those golden divine seals were endlessly large. It was as if they were palm seals of a divine god. All of the seals clashed into the battle matrix with supreme might at the same time. Boom, boom, boom. Terrifying waves of sound engulfed all who were present. The void trembled violently, and the battle matrix trembled as well. Yet, the ancient gods' figures continued to stand steady with no signs of collapse or destruction. The battle matrix of the rocks was truly rock-steady, extremely firm and unmovable. Their defense is strong. The rest of the cultivators' hearts wavered. Even such a dominating attack couldn't move the battle matrix of the rocks. All the attack did was make it tremble. It didn't even make a crack. It was not difficult to imagine how strong the defense of the battle matrix was. This was very similar to the battle at the Lost Clan last time. Chapter 2388. One Dominating Attack. The expressions of the apex cultivators from the Divine Prefecture all turned rather solemn. Naturally, the Vajra region lord's attack was extremely powerful, as he was indubitably one of the strongest in the Divine Prefecture. Yet even his attack didn't manage to move the battle matrix of the rocks. It was just like how the prodigies at Lost Clan back then weren't able to break the battle matrix of the rocks. But the difference was that those who were engaged in battle today were far more powerful. These were true overlords who were at the top of the cultivation pyramid. Of course, those who set down the battle matrix were stronger as well. These were the greatest cultivators of the Lost Clan. With their powers amplified by the battle matrix, their combined level wasn't as simple as a sum of their individual powers. So, it's not abnormal that the Vajra region lord wasn't able to break the battle matrix. In the vast, boundless space, the battle matrix of the rocks shrouded the skies as numerous, endlessly large ancient god figures stood atop the world. It was as if even the celestial skies of the area itself had turned into a projection of the ancient gods. It was like the sky had disappeared and was replaced. This entire part of the world transformed into the battle matrix of the rocks. As the resonance grew stronger, the might that the battle matrix encompassed also became more and more terrifying. With the resonance of the Lost Clan cultivators, the skies merged into one and created an atmosphere of extreme solemnness. As terrifying booming noises echoed in the air, the figures of the ancient gods started moving. Their eyes opened, and their gaze shot down from above. They looked down toward the people below them as if they were true divine gods. Attack together. Everyone, take a different position, someone inside the battle matrix said. The others nodded. The power of the battle matrix was far more powerful than the sum of the cultivators who formed it. However, the battlefield covered a huge area, and it was impossible to make every face of the matrix strong. Even though the entire battle matrix was whole, as long as their attacks were spread across every area in the matrix, there would be a chance to break it. Let's go, one of the cultivators said. The Vajra region lord once again conjured his terrifying power as the figure of the Vajra ancient god continued to expand, and countless golden arms appeared. There were rumors that the birth of the Vajra region was related to the Western world of Buddhism. The first ancestor of the Vajra region could even be a Buddhist cultivator, which explained why some of the arts from the Vajra region were similar to that of the Buddhists. The countless arms were like the 1,000-armed Buddha, shining with magnificent divine lights. Unparalleled golden divine lights erupted from the frame of the ancient god. This time, his target was no longer the entire battle matrix of the rocks, but only one specific spot on it. He only had to attack one of the faces and leave the others to the other cultivators. On the other hand, an endlessly large pattern appeared behind the Lord of Yuanshire Palace. The mythical pattern was like a true great matrix of divine retribution. As divine lights erupted, swords of divine retribution that contained might that could destroy the skies moved within it. They pointed at another point in the battle matrix of the rocks. The chief of the Jiang clan, ancient royal family, and the lord of the boundless mountains were there. Every single one was a leader of an ancient god clan. They were the greatest beings of the divine prefecture. It was inconceivable that cultivators of their level would simultaneously release their powers. This was all in order to break the battle matrix of the rocks with brute force. Inside the battle matrix, Futian felt a faint pressure. After all, those inside the battle matrix were the most powerful cultivators in the entire divine prefecture, and he wasn't sure how destructive their combined attacks would be. But at this point, all he could do was use all of his powers. The battle matrix of the rocks caused power resonance, which gave them a significant advantage. The Guqin continued to sound as the battle matrix merged into one. The greatest cultivators of the Lost Clan all let go of their will and allowed the sounds of the Guqin to lead their wills towards resonance, fusing into the battle matrix. It was as if they were now all part of the battle matrix of the rocks, indistinct from each other. The matrix was them, and they were the matrix. Do it. One voice sounded, prompting the apex cultivators of the Divine Prefecture to attack simultaneously. The instant they launched the attack, it was as though the physical space inside the battle matrix of the rocks was shattering again. But at the same time, inside the matrix, it seemed that the ancient gods were moving. Terrifying divine lights shot out from the Lost Clan cultivators inside the matrix, converging towards a single location. There, an ancient god suddenly opened his eyes. As terrifying sounds rumbled in the air, his arms moved as well. Atop the celestial skies, an endlessly large golden divine hammer appeared. Boom! The divine hammer was raised by a divine god. A terrifying aura erupted and swept through the world as the divine hammer smashed down from the sky. It was as though the world was covered by a divine hammer so large that one couldn't see where it ended. When it came smashing down, countless projections of the divine hammer appeared all across the vast space as a golden hurricane destroyed everything in its way from top to bottom. Anything in its path had been completely obliterated. The Vajra region lord's pupils constricted. It turned out that this attack had been directed at him, as it had come straight down in his direction. While others were also in its area of impact, he was the clearest target. Clearly, the Lost Clan cultivators chose to deal with him one by one, starting with him. Before the attack even landed, a storm of obliteration swept down from above. It was as though all great paths in the world had been crushed and shattered under the power of this attack. Terrifying sounds of explosions sounded. When the divine hammer finally landed, countless Vajra divine seals burst. They had been destroyed and crushed by brute force. It was a clash of two attacks, but the divine hammer was overwhelmingly more powerful. Careful! The divine prefecture cultivators below were shocked by what they saw atop the celestial skies. Although the battlefield was already in outer space, extremely high up, the flares from their battle were too powerful. Even from a region extremely far away, anyone of slightly higher cultivation levels could directly see what was happening inside the battlefield. As the attack landed, even the cultivators from the Vajra region felt concerned for their lord. Some were even quietly speaking inside, wanting to alert the region lord to be careful of the attack. Divine Hammer of the Protector. The cultivators from the Four Corner Village who saw the divine technique were shaken to their core. Clearly, the Lost Clan overlord who launched the attack read the divine technique and cultivated them. The Divine Hammer of the Protector was indeed a good match for the power of the Lost Clan's cultivation. Both had supreme strength and rigidity and were extremely dominating forces. As the Divine Hammer smashed down, the Vajra divine seals collapsed. The countless arms of the Vajra ancient god propped up the skies and slammed onto the Divine Hammer. But it still wasn't able to stop the hammer. As the Divine Hammer came down, these arms were crushed into fragments, and the hammer continued downward, below the sky. Blinding divine lights of the Great Path erupted from the Vajra region lord. He had transformed into the Vajra divine body, unable to be killed or destroyed, forged to be unbreakable. As the divine body raised his hand to attack, it collided with the divine hammer, which was smashing downward. A terrifying, deafening sound erupted. Tang! As the sound of collision echoed the air, it seemed that cracks started forming on the Vajra divine body as a result of the blast. It started falling from the sky. As the cracks started sprawling all over the divine body, a muffled groan could be heard from inside. Then, as a blinding golden light started flashing from the divine body, the Vajra region lord reverted to his mortal form. It was as if he were becoming an ordinary man. There was even blood seeping out from the corner of his mouth. No part of him resembled the supreme apex cultivator that had loomed over this era. Clearly, even the Vajra region lord was wounded by this supremely dominating attack. Chapter 2389. Aggression. While this blow injured the Vajra region lord considerably, attacks from other cultivators continued to land on the battle matrix of the rocks. Inevitably, the matrix began to tremble and fractures started to appear. Presently, the battle matrix of the rocks was a united entity. However, when all the cultivators within the matrix gathered their strength to attack, most of their power was concentrated on attacking. Though the power to attack skyrocketed, it was at the expense of their defense, hence its weakened stability. Of course, there was no such thing as a perfect battle matrix in the world, and any method had its own inherent weak points. However, to injure a supreme cultivator, like the Vajra region lord, with a single blow meant that it must have been something that possessed a great deterring force. After the attack, the divine light circulated inside the battle matrix, and those fissures were quickly repaired. The expressions of the cultivators inside the battle matrix remained calm, and their breathing was stable. It didn't seem like they were being affected much by this strike. Buzz. At this moment, the divine light continued to flow. Above the firmament, the massive and boundless divine hammer was taking form once again. The figure of the ancient god stood tall between heaven and earth. Both of his hands picked up the divine hammer. A horrific authority of might fell from the sky as the hammer was raised again above the crowd. It was as if it might smash down again at any time. And this time, it was still aimed at the Vajra region lord. "Does everyone still wish to continue?" said an indifferent voice from the battle matrix. This hammer did not come down right away. It was meant to intimidate these relentless cultivators. In the battle matrix, all the top figures were filled with divine light, and their aura was astounding. They had even resorted to divine items, but their eyes were somber and heavy. The battle matrix of the rocks was more powerful than they expected. In the previous battle with the Lost Clan, the battle matrix of the rocks was mainly used as a defense, but now, the battle matrix was gathering its strength for another attack. Furthermore, it was the super powerful attacking divine method, the divine hammer of the protector. This divine method was the secret knowledge from Four Corner Village. Without a doubt, Futian had taught it to the Lost Clan. They stared at the white-haired man in the midst of the battle matrix with some coldness. Was this Futian's failsafe? Leveraging the strength from the Lost Clan's battle matrix of the rocks to discourage the cultivators from the divine prefecture so that they dared not act as they pleased. "No matter how strong this battle matrix is, it will eventually collapse," said a figure with a degree of coldness. "But before the battle matrix disintegrates, perhaps one or two peak-level characters will go down with the battle matrix as well. I am afraid it might even directly lead to some major power shift in the future setup of the divine prefecture." The voice inside the battle matrix continued, silencing everyone. If the mighty offensive force of the battle matrix of the rocks were to keep attacking a single individual without discernment, it did have the possibility of annihilating an existence at the giant level. Furthermore, once such characters perished, it would inevitably mean the weakening of their clans. To say that this had the possibility of changing the pattern of power in divine prefecture was not an overstatement. Any existence at this level was qualified to influence the future of divine prefecture. Who dared to gamble on that? For a time, the inside of the battle matrix became eerily quiet. Only wisps of a terrifying coercion permeated the area. However, no one dared to make another move at the moment. Especially the Vajra region lord, who had just suffered a considerable traumatic injury, felt a sense of vague fear. If the divine hammer above the sky continued to pummel him without any concern, it could really drive him into a desperate situation. Although he had not yet reached his most powerful state, what about the battle matrix of the rocks? No one knew whether the current attack was already its ultimate state or not. After all, the cultivators from the Lost Clan that were inside the battle matrix could potentially be stronger. Back then, in that battle at the Lost Clan, the cultivators in the final battle matrix attacked in spite of themselves, thus increasing the power of the battle matrix by leaps and bounds. The most likely outcome of continued combat was a lose-lose scenario for both. Finally, these top figures from the divine prefecture were silent. Although their aura was still blooming, the sharpness had been greatly reduced. It seemed that they had lost the momentum they held previously. Obviously, they no longer had the determination to take Futian down. Ultimately, No one could guarantee if they would be the ones on the other end of the hammer when it finally smashed down. If you are dead set on continuing with the fighting, I'm afraid no one can predict the outcome. Please consider it carefully. The voice in the battle matrix spoke up again. Although Yi Futian is in possession of divine items, all of you are from the ancient god clan, and you know this very well. Why bother making up excuses to disguise your real intent to plunder? This voice reverberated throughout the void, echoing in the battle matrix. The aura from some of these people gradually retracted as the divine light dissipated. Clearly, some had decided to give up altogether. Seeing that some of them had given up, other cultivators suddenly reconsidered the battle matrix that was up high. Although they were loath to let it go like this, they understood that today's matter had to stop here. It would be challenging to take down Yi Futian given everything that had transpired unless every one of these top figures from the Divine Prefecture could unite to deal with him. Anything short of their full determination was not enough, as none of them had the bravado to be the first one to lead the charge. Gradually, other cultivators also retracted their auras, including the Vajra region lord himself. Witnessing this development, the divine hammer that was suspended above everyone's head gradually dissipated and vanished. The battle matrix disbanded as all the cultivators from the Lost Clan were left standing in its place. Yi Futian had stopped playing the guqin as well. He looked down into the area below. Over yonder, there was another major battle, and the scene of destruction was extremely frightening. Nonetheless, it was currently at a stalemate, as one side had not been able to overcome the other. No wonder he's the demon overlord from thousands of years ago. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture secretly marveled in their hearts. The Lord of Tianyin City's combat effectiveness was absolute and doubtless. He was a super existence in armor-making, but all types of cultivation were interconnected. When his armor-making reached the topmost level, it was the same with his combat effectiveness. Not to mention, he had a most terrifying divine weapon in his possession. Even so, it still failed to repel old demon Tunshin, which was enough to demonstrate the terrifying nature of this type of demon overlord. The battle above subsided. The Lord of Tianyin City did not pursue the matter and eventually stopped fighting. His gaze swept to the sky above, and the sharpness of it was unmistakable. All the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture had merged their power together, and they couldn't even take down a Ren Huang in the 7th realm. His sharp eyes glanced at the other cultivators from the Divine Prefecture as he let out a cold huff. "Let's get out of here," he said. The cultivators of Tianyin City gathered around him, preparing to leave en masse. The original realm is the territory of the Divine Prefecture. The Heavenly Mandate Academy colluded with the Devil Overlord of the Devil World. They are unworthy of remaining in the land of Divine Prefecture. When he finished speaking, he waved his hand. An infinite divine light fell upon the land below. The attacks were swift and violent. They descended upon the Heavenly Mandate Academy in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the Heavenly Mandate Academy crumbled like crazy under those terrible attacks. Although Yi Futian had already sent those in the academy who were weaker in cultivation than the Ziwei segmentum, there were some Ranhuang who had been left behind. They retreated frantically, but some were too slow and were buried along with the ruin that was the Heavenly Mandate Academy. In a single turning of the mind, that magnificent academy was once again destroyed. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy watched all this in the sky above. Though their cultivation level was high enough, who could stop the attacks from the Lord of Tianyin City himself? Even before they had time to react, all they saw was the academy in a pile of rubble. After having destroyed the Heavenly Mandate Academy, the Lord of Tianyin City left with his cultivators. For him, it was nothing more than an impulse which he couldn't care less, and there was no reason for him to care either. Even those ordinary Renhuang, who were considered powerful in the cultivation world, were nothing more than insects in his eyes. Tianyin City enjoyed a lofty position in the Divine Prefecture, and he who had the whole city in the palm of his hand had all the rights to be arrogant and proud. No one bothered to stop him. If the Lord of Tianyin City wanted to leave, then unless they unleashed the battle matrix of the rocks to hinder him, he could not be stopped. More importantly, the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy were still much weaker in comparison. Yi Futian looked skyward. watching the Heavenly Mandate Academy being destroyed yet again, watching the Lord of Tianyan City leaving with his minions just like that. An extremely icy, murderous intent flashed through his eyes. This was the man at the helm of the ancient god clan, the cultivator who stood at the very peak of the divine prefecture. Even in defeat, he was still so unbelievably pompous and overbearing, destroying the Heavenly Mandate Academy mindlessly. He had no concern at all if there had been any cultivators inside the Heavenly Mandate Academy. In the eyes of someone at this level, perhaps the lives of the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy account for nothing at all. If it hadn't been for him to make those arrangements in advance to send away as many people from the Heavenly Mandate Academy as possible, the consequences of the attack by the Lord of Tianyan City would be unthinkable. When he thought of that, Futian looked at the figure in the distance that was slowly disappearing. A strong murderous intent flashed through his eyes. Did he think of the lives of all these people in the Heavenly Mandate Academy as nothing, and that he could get away razing the academy to the ground with a wave of his hand? If he were powerful enough one day, he would most certainly return the same treatment to the Lord of Tianyan City. Ruthless, other major forces from Divine Prefecture thought when they glanced at the academy that was now nothing more than a pile of rubble. The Lord of Tianyan City was aggressive. This parting blow was because of the resentment that was still in his heart. He had failed to achieve his goal, which was to take away the body of Shunjia, the great emperor. But it might have also been because his descendant, Wang Mian, had been defeated. No matter what the reason was, it didn't matter anymore. The strength of the Lord of Tianyan City was indisputable. Even if he had destroyed the Heavenly Mandate Academy, what could they do? Unless it were Futian that they wanted to take away, then these people would stop at nothing to fight against them. Comparatively speaking, the destruction of a mere Heavenly Mandate Academy was a small price to pay. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture left one after the other. Soon, all the major principalities had left and disappeared to return to the Central Emperor realm. Since they failed to achieve their goal, there was no point in lingering any longer. However, there were also a few forces that had not left. Those were the forces on friendly terms with Futian, and the cultivators of West Imperial Palace in the West Sea Domain had also stayed behind. The battle concluded, and Futian's spiritual soul came out of the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, to return to his own physical body. A sense of weakness washed over Futian, and his breathing began to fluctuate as his body drifted to the grounds below. Qiqia was watching Futian and wanted to say something. However, when she saw Futian's attention was focused on the area below, she kept her silence. Then, she saw Futian and the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy were moving further below, so she and the cultivators from the West Imperial Palace also followed along with them. The Heavenly Mandate Academy was destroyed by a single blow, and the Heavenly Mandate City did not escape unscathed. The aftermath of that blow swept across all of the Heavenly Mandate City and shattered many buildings. Those with weaker cultivation were severely injured in the aftermath, and those who got a little too close perished needlessly. This sudden catastrophe due to the aftermath was an unexpected and unfortunate consequence. At the moment, many cultivators in the Heavenly Mandate City gathered at the place where the Heavenly Mandate Academy used to be. Looking at the academy that was now turned into ruins, many people clenched their fists, deep in their shared grief and indignation. The Heavenly Mandate Academy had long become a symbol of the Heavenly Mandate realm, respected and worshipped by everyone inside Heavenly Mandate City. They had all seen the battle that took place in the void. The kind of people that Futian and the Heavenly Mandate Academy had come in contact with were no longer anyone that they could identify with. They were all heavyweights from Divine Prefecture and other worlds. They knew very well what kind of pressure that the Heavenly Mandate Academy was facing. They never anticipated that after the battle, a cultivator from Divine Prefecture would and could destroy the academy with a wave of his hand. Futian and everyone inside the Heavenly Mandate Academy landed on the ruins. All of them looked down at the ground below. A terrifying and sharp aura of the Great Path still remained inside the ruins. The academy had been destroyed once again. Not only was Futian angry, but the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy behind him felt the same. A coldness effused from them, and a murderous intent was more than obvious in their eyes. "College Chief," Sumren Huang called out. Their eyes were red. Some of their companions and loved ones had been killed. Ren Huangyi. Below, everyone in the heavenly mandate city was also looking at Yi Futian above the void and called out his name. In the distant heavenly mandate city, some people bowed their heads in Yi Futian's direction. He looked yonder and saw a corpse lying in front of the person who was kneeling and bowing. His voice was tinged with sorrow and anger. Divine consciousness shrouded the boundless space, and Yi Futian saw that many people were crying in many places. The Heavenly Mandate Academy will not be rebuilt. Just the teleportation Grand Matrix and a simple cultivation court need to be rebuilt. The rest of this ruin will remain as it is. The aura of the great path left over by the Lord of Tianyin City is not to be erased. Let it stay here, Yi Futian said as if giving an order. This was the first time ever that he gave an order in a tone like this to the people around him. Behind them, Lord Taixian and the others responded and took the order. They understood the meaning behind Yi Futian's order. This was the shame of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, but it was also a reminder of the score to be settled. Keeping all of this here was a reminder to themselves that they should always remember all that had happened today and never forget. Before they could repay everything that happened today back to Tianyin City, the Heavenly Mandate Academy would not be rebuilt. Shi Qiyao was touched when she beheld the scene in front of her. It seemed that Yi Futian and his people were truly angered now and would remember what transpired today. The Lord of Tianyin City had dealt this random, unpremeditated attack because he didn't care. But Yi Futian cared, and the people from the Heavenly Mandate Academy cared. The cultivators in the Heavenly Mandate City cared, and they would remember. It was inevitable now that Tianyin City and the Heavenly Mandate Academy had become mortal enemies. Yi Futian was not even this irate when he realized that they had come to relieve him of Shunjia, the great emperor's body, who in the divine prefecture didn't covet the body of a great emperor. But this random strike from the Lord of Tianyin City seemed to have touched Yi Futian's soft spot, and he really took notice now. It was very likely that in the future, Tianyin City's crimes today would not be forgotten. The haughty Lord of Tianyin City didn't care much about the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Perhaps he was too arrogant to realize that he might have offended someone with more potential than he was aware. Of course, perhaps in the eyes of Lord of Tianyin City, it didn't really matter to him either. Even if Yi Futian reached the fullness of his potential one day, he needn't fear. Given his status in Tianyin City, what could Yi Futian do to him? As to Yi Futian's potential of becoming an emperor, he hadn't thought about it, and no one would either. In the countless years after the collapse of the heavenly path, how many new emperors had come into being in the world? No matter how talented and unparalleled Yi Futian was, it wasn't so easy to become an emperor. Chapter 2391. Yu Sheng's Identity. The Heavenly Mandate Academy rebuilt the Matrix. At the same time, they used the power of the Great Path to set up a barrier over the ruins. However, overall, the Heavenly Mandate Academy was still a barren ruin. Yi Futian stood on top of the ruins as he gazed into the distance. The stronger his cultivation became, the stronger the people he came in contact with. His enemies similarly became stronger. From the looks of it, only by truly standing at the peak could he avoid experiencing such things again. Ren Huangyi, do you really want to retain this ruin? Will you allow the once glorious Heavenly Mandate Academy to remain like this? Asked Shi Qiyao as she walked up behind Yi Futian. Although she understood Yi Futian's resolve, she still had a hard time understanding why he was doing this. Yi Futian turned around and glanced at Shi Qiyao. He nodded his head slightly. Shi Qiyao smiled and continued. Before this, Ren Huangyi promised to allow me to join the Heavenly Mandate Academy to cultivate. Now, I have no choice but to follow you. Wherever you cultivate, I will follow. After she said this, she suddenly felt a cold will acting on her. She shifted her gaze and saw the cold and indifferent gaze of the woman beside Yi Futian sweeping towards her. The powerful will had extraordinary attack power. Shi Qiyao was stunned. She then revealed a faint smile. Mrs. Yi, please don't pay it much heed. I mean no harm, explained Shi Qiyao. Hua Jieyu did not look at her anymore, shifting her gaze away. Yi Futian extended his hand and grabbed hold of hers. Their fingers interlocked as they held hands. They could sense each other's warmth. Shi Qiyao glanced over at their hands. It was not easy for them to still have such passion after reaching such a state. However, it might be so because they had reunited after a long time and had experienced many life or death situations together. There's something else which I wish to remind Ren Huangyi of, Shi Qiao continued. Yi Futian looked at her and said, Goddess Qiao, please speak your mind. After this battle, the forces from the Divine Prefecture will surely do a more thorough investigation on Ren Huangye's background, especially the origin of your friend here. When Shi Qiao said this, she looked towards the burly figure standing on the other side of Yi Futian. The person was none other than Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng and Hua Jieyu had been standing beside Yi Futian all this time. Shi Qiao advised, prior to this, cultivators from the Divine Prefecture have been speculating about Ren Huangye's background. Your friend had such an outstanding performance during the battle just now. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture can tell that he most likely has extraordinary status in the Devil world. Such a figure is actually Ren Huangye's best friend, and the two of you grew up together. This will most likely become an important clue for the cultivators. Ren Huangyi, you need to be careful. When she said this, her gaze was locked on Yi Futian's. Aside from reminding him to be cautious, she also intended to test him out. Unfortunately, her probing was a letdown. She didn't see any turbulence in his deep and dark eyes. It was as though he had no emotion. Yi Futian showed no response when she mentioned his background. Shi Qiao had no clue that, in reality, even Yi Futian was unclear about his own origin. Who was he? Why would Godfather protect him? Who was Yu Sheng? However, what Shi Qiao had said was true. Based on Yu Sheng's performance today, one could tell from a glance that his status in the Devil world was very high. A demonic cultivator, who was a match for the Lord of Tianyin City, was actually guarding Yu Sheng. One could imagine how great Yu Sheng's value in the Devil world was. Yi Futian could speculate the identity of Godfather by looking at Yu Sheng's high standing in the Devil world. If so, who was Yi Futian? Why would he be together with Godfather and Yu Sheng? He was clearly not a demonic cultivator. It seemed like he had to ask Yu Sheng about this matter. Perhaps Yu Sheng would know something about it after his trip to the Devil world. Thank you for your reminder. If Goddess is willing to cultivate alongside me, I'll surely not turn you away, replied Yi Futian. He then said, but I have something else to discuss with them now. Can Goddess give us a moment here? Sure. Shi Qiao smiled and left. The rest of the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy also moved away, giving Yi Futian and the other two some space. Fangai even set up a spatial barrier so that the conversation between Yi Futian, Yu Sheng, and Hua Jieyu would not be overheard by others. It was very considerate of Fangai. Above the ruins, Yi Futian scanned the surroundings and lamented with a dry smile. I did not expect that when the two of you returned, the Heavenly Mandate Academy would be in such a state. As he said this, he turned towards Jieyu. His hand was still holding hers tightly. His eyes twinkled with great joy. The two of them exchanged a glance. It was as though all their words were contained in their gazes. They could acutely sense each other's emotions. They could learn about the state of the other party with just their wills connected. There was no need for words. Yi Futian raised his other arm and gently stroked Hua Jieyu's hair. His gaze was loving and gentle. He smiled and said nothing. Then, he turned around and looked at Yu Sheng, saying, Yu Sheng, how are you doing in the Devil world? I have been cultivating since I went there, replied Yu Sheng. Do you have any news about Godfather? Yi Futian suddenly asked. Yu Sheng frowned slightly. Then, he shook his head. How about his identity? Do you know anything about it? Yi Futian asked again. However, Yu Sheng still shook his head. It seemed he knew nothing about any of these matters. How about yourself? Do you know your status in the Devil world? Yi Futian probed further. Yu Sheng looked at him and, again, shook his head. Baffled, Yi Futian looked at Yu Sheng with a gaping mouth. Yu Sheng had been cultivating in the Devil world for more than 20 years now. With his current status and cultivation level, he actually knew nothing. This was Yu Sheng said, after I went to the Devil world, the Devil Emperor met me in the Devil Imperial Palace. After that, he taught me demonic attack techniques. He even allowed me to cultivate with him. He taught me personally, prepared trials for me to experience, and assigned cultivators to follow me. I seemed to be an alien in the Devil Imperial Palace. Many people speculated that the Devil Emperor places high importance on me due to my talent. They said that he wants to groom me as his successor. They regard me as a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Yusheng continued, however, the Devil Emperor himself has never stated his intention of accepting me as a disciple. In fact, he seldom communicates with me aside from when we cultivate together. The other disciples of the Devil Emperor bear animosity towards me. No one has ever mentioned anything about my origin. Perhaps they know nothing about it. Or perhaps they are fearful of mentioning it. Is it due to the order of the Devil Emperor? Yi Futian speculated. Maybe, Yusheng replied. I have asked the Devil Emperor about it before. He didn't respond to my questions. I thought of investigating the matter myself, but I found nothing. Everything in the Devil Imperial Palace is under the control of the Devil Emperor. If he chooses to hide the truth from me, I will most likely never be able to figure it out. Even if someone else knows the truth, they will surely hide it from me. Yi Futian revealed a serious expression upon hearing Yusheng's words. Throughout Yusheng's stay in the Devil World for more than 20 years, the Devil Emperor taught him personally simply due to his talent. Was this possible? Why would the Devil Emperor groom a cultivator brought back to the Devil World without reason? Furthermore, judging from the Devil Emperor's attitude, there were certainly some secrets related to Yusheng's identity. The Devil Emperor didn't want to tell Yusheng about it, yet he personally taught him cultivation techniques. News of everything that happened in the Heavenly Mandate Academy very quickly spread throughout the 9 realms. The cultivators from various major worlds all knew about this. They never imagined that the forces of the Divine Prefecture would end up having internal conflict first. The cultivators of the other worlds were happy to enjoy the show. In a courtyard in the Ziwei segmentum, a group of people appeared. They seemed rather lively. Yi Futian and Hua Jieyu were among the group, as well as Hua Fenglu and Huan Yinyu. Hua Jieyu had returned safe and sound. The first thing Yi Futian wanted to do was to bring her to meet his master. When Hua Fenglu and Nandu Wenin saw that Jieyu had finally returned, they felt joy that could not be expressed in words. Smiles covered their faces. Huan Yinyu was also very happy. When she was young, her elder sister and brother-in-law had left, becoming remnants in her memories. Finally, they were reunited. Yusheng was not with them. After the incident in the Heavenly Mandate Academy was over, they had temporarily returned to Ziwei Imperial Palace. Yusheng had instead returned to meet with the others in the Devil World. With Yusheng's current standing in the Devil World, Yi Futian did not need to worry about him at all. There was a Devil Overlord protecting him by his side. Moreover, with Yusheng's identity, no one dared to touch him. The Lord of Tianyan City dared to act against Yi Futian, but did he dare to act against Yusheng, who might be the heir of the Devil Emperor? If he offended the Devil World, the Devil Emperor might order his armies to attack Tianyan City. When that happened, no matter how powerful Tianyan City was, it would still face the perils of extinction. After all, only Donghuang the Great was a match for the Devil Emperor. Hua Jieyu was chatting with Hua Fenglu and Nandu Wenin about her experiences these past years. She felt an intense sense of guilt towards her parents. It had been so long since the ordeal of the Holy Palace. Only now had she truly returned to her parents' side. Aside from their family, there was another woman in the courtyard. This woman had an extraordinary temperament and appeared like a goddess that was beyond this world. She was similarly beautiful like Hua Jieyu, but their temperaments were completely different. Hua Jieyu's beauty was like that of the Jotian goddess. She appeared like a true deity. However, this woman appeared otherworldly, like someone from beyond this world. She was flawless and immaculate. People felt a sense of comfort just by looking at her. At that moment, Hua Fenglu and Nandu Wenin got up together and came before this woman. They actually bowed down towards her and said, "Thank you, Miss Hua, for protecting Jieyu and preventing her spiritual soul from perishing. Both of you need not be so polite with me. All these years, Jieyu and I have become one and are inseparable. I also feel extremely close with both of you. How could I accept such treatment?" said the woman as she lifted the two of them up from their bows. Yi Futian stood quietly to the side and watched. When he saw this scene, he smiled and said, "It should be expected." It turned out that this woman was Hua Qingqing. one of the four major beauties of the Eastern Barren Territory back in the day. After Hua Jieyu entered Eastern Barren College, she was crowned one of the major beauties too. Hua Qingqing and Hua Jieyu were both famous beauties. Unfortunately, Hua Qingqing was not favored by fate. Her entire family was killed. She was spared from the calamity since her parents sent her to Book Mountain. Futian also felt emotional when he found out that Hua Qingqing was the one who saved Hua Jieyu in the past. He recalled the scene where he played the divine melody on top of the mountain. "Mom, Dad, what Qingqing said is true. She and I are one. We are of one mind. She knows my thoughts, and I know hers. After I inherited the teachings and proved my way, I resuscitated Qingqing's flesh. The two of us are like sisters," Hua Jieyu said while beaming. In the past, Hua Qingqing transformed into a spiritual lamp to protect her. Without her protection, Hua Jieyu would have long perished, and it would have been impossible for her to defeat Brahma's pure sky empress. Hua Fenglu had an idea when he heard Hua Jieyu's words. He knew that Hua Qingqing was not favored by luck and had suffered from many misfortunes. As he looked at her ethereal beauty, compassion overflowed in his heart. He said, "Miss Qingqing, Mei Wanyin and I have the honor of having you as our goddaughter." In reality, the cultivation planes of Hua Fenglu and Nandu Wanyin were far lower than that of Hua Qingqing. In the cultivation world, a person's status was usually determined by their plane. Supposedly, Hua Fenglu should not have made such a request. However, Hua Fenglu was not someone who was restrained by rules. He was not interested in fame or power either. Moreover, Hua Fenglu was very close to Yi Futian, who was both his disciple and his son-in-law. Therefore, he did not feel inferior to them, and he did not consider his own cultivation plane when he made the request. He had this idea merely because he took pity on Hua Qingqing, not to mention she was of one mind with Hua Jieyu, and the two of them had shared a body before. His words caused Hua Qingqing's heart to quiver. She raised her head and looked at Hua Fenglu with her crystal-clear eyes. She beamed and said, "The honor is mine. I'm more than happy to have such a blessing." Hua Jieyu and Yi Futian grinned when they heard this. In that case, they were considered a family now. Hua Jieyu and Hua Qingqing were sisters. Hua Qingqing also had a home from now on. At this moment, a voice rang in Hua Qingqing's mind. Her journey in this world was still unfinished. An empty imperial palace in the central emperor realm of the original realm. In the palace, divine light circulated and was extremely dazzling. The daughter of Donghuang the Great was staying here for now. Princess Donghuang, as well as the cultivators from Donghuang Imperial Palace, had made this place their base. Right then, outside the palace, a group of cultivators had come from the Divine Prefecture. They requested an audience with Princess Donghuang. Someone outside of the empty Imperial Palace announced their arrival, and Princess Donghuang received the other party. Within the palace, before an ancient temple, Princess Donghuang stood at the top of a flight of stairs. When she saw the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture, she asked, "Seniors, what business do you have with me to have come all the way here?" "Princess, we have come to deliver an urgent report," a cultivator from the Divine Prefecture answered loudly as they bowed slightly towards Princess Donghuang. "Please make your report," she said. "It is regarding Yi Futian," someone said as he then glanced in other directions. Princess Donghuang swept a glance around them. Immediately, a person behind her glowed with brilliant divine light. He sealed off the space and separated it from the outside world. Clearly, she understood the other party's intention from their gaze. "Will this do?" continued Princess Donghuang. One of the cultivators who came reported, "Princess, we have previously investigated Yi Futian's background. He is from the 9 states, a mortal realm from the lower worlds. The great emperor had passed through there before. According to our investigation, Yi Futian should be from an island in the East Sea known as the city of Qingzhou. The place is isolated from the rest of the world, and later on even disappeared. The entire island has vanished, as though it was wiped off the map by someone overnight." "What are you trying to say?" Princess Donghuang inquired further. "I have heard that Princess has also ventured to the city of Qingzhou before. There is the last statue of a certain someone there, and you have previously led a group over there to investigate." Princess Donghuang looked at the other party with a sharp gaze. She asked, "You are well informed. What does this have to do with Yi Futian? The person bowed and continued, Princess, Yi Futian has exceptional talent that is peerless in this generation. Even the monstrous figures of the ancient god clan had a difficult time against him. How could such a prominent figure not come from a special background? Moreover, his brother and good friend, Yushang, actually received personal guidance from the Devil Emperor. Yushang clearly has ties with the Devil world, and his identity is also certain to be extraordinary. Their birthplace is coincidentally the place where that person's statue stands. Moreover, regarding Yi Futian's surname, is it the one he was born with, or was he given the surname Yi? Chapter 2393, Exposed. When he said that, the air suddenly turned quiet. Yi Futian, was he born with the surname Yi, or had he been given the surname Yi? Many didn't know what happened back then, but as the most powerful organization in the Divine Prefecture, he naturally knew some insider information. The individual whom he spoke of just now was a taboo in the Divine Prefecture. He didn't even dare say his name directly in front of Princess Donghuang and had to refer to him as that man. But everyone present knew who that man was referring to. Back in those times, he was widely regarded as on par with Donghuan the Great, one of the two emperors of the Divine Prefecture, Emperor Yi Qing. However, many years ago, Emperor Yi Qing died one night, and all those in the top echelons of the Divine Prefecture knew that Emperor Yi Qing had died at the hands of Donghuan the Great. In the Divine Prefecture, who else but Donghuan the Great could kill Emperor Yi Qing? A cultivator on the level of a great emperor, even if he would let you ambush and assassinate him without resisting, anyone below the level of a great emperor wouldn't be able to kill him. Only Donghuan the Great could do it. Moreover, Donghuan the Great ordered to wipe out all traces of Emperor Yi Qing's existence after the incident. Now, they found out that Yi Futian came from Qingzhou City. Donghuan Princess once went there, and there was even a statue of Emperor Yi Qing there. Combined with Yi Futian and Yushang's natural gift, some amongst the top forces of the Divine Prefecture had begun to connect the dots between Yi Futian and Emperor Yi Qing. They came to report the matter to Princess Donghuang. If this suspicion proved to be true, then Yi Futian would die without a doubt. Furthermore, even if it weren't proven, as long as the Donghuang Imperial Palace suspected Yi Futian, this would be the end of him. There would be no future for Yi Futian. He could even be brought away by the Imperial Palace. Donghuan the Great wiped away all traces of Emperor Yi Qing's existence, so how could he tolerate someone related to Emperor Yi Qing to exist? Especially since Yi Futian could be Emperor Yi Qing's kin. Yi, was that his original surname, or was it bestowed upon him after the fact? No matter which situation it was, the Donghuang Imperial Palace would not allow it. A formless might shrouded the space in the area, and terrifying divine lights shot out from Princess Donghuang's pretty eyes and swept across the cultivators who were talking below her. Her gaze turned razor-sharp as a thought crossed her mind. You suspect that Yi Futian is related to Emperor Yi Qing? Princess Donghuang asked directly. Though the others didn't dare to carelessly mention Emperor Yi Qing's name, Princess Donghuang didn't have any scruples. Even if Donghuang the Great knew about it, what could he do to his only daughter, whom he loved so much? He wouldn't fuss about it at all. Yi Futian's origins are strange, to say the least, and he has such great talent, not to mention he was able to receive the inheritance of several great emperors. After learning of his origins, we investigated several clues and had to raise this suspicion, one of the individuals said. But we weren't able to confirm the truth either. Everything so far is just speculation, which is why we came to the Donghuang Imperial Palace. We believe that Princess can investigate the matter and make the decision so we wouldn't need to worry about it. As long as the relation between Yi Futian and Emperor Yi Qing was proven, they wouldn't need to worry about dealing with Yi Futian. However, all those secrets, treasures, and inheritance Yi Futian held would have nothing to do with them. Once the Imperial Palace decided to deal with Yi Futian, all of Yi Futian's belongings, including himself, would belong to the Imperial Palace, and they would have no chance to obtain it. Of course, it would eliminate a threat for them. At least Yi Futian wouldn't have the chance to develop himself. Understood, Princess Donghuang said coldly. I will investigate this matter, and the Imperial Palace will intervene. As for you, do not partake in the matter anymore, and don't tell anyone about it. Yes, Princess, The divine prefecture cultivators bowed and greeted her before leaving. The whole purpose of the trip was to alert Princess Donghuang. There was no need for them to be concerned about what happened afterward. After the cultivators left the Donghuang Imperial Palace, several figures appeared behind Princess Donghuang. All of those who appeared had their eyes locked on Princess Donghuang. One of them was surrounded by magnificent divine lights. Standing there, he gave off the impression of extraordinary elegance, as though he was someone of great noble status. "Your Highness, do we head to the heavenly mandate realm first to capture Yi Futian?" that person asked. His voice was so apathetic it was as though capturing Yi Futian would be an extremely insignificant task for him. Donghuang the Great ruled over the entire land of the Divine Prefecture, and the whole prefecture was under his jurisdiction. While the forces of the Divine Prefecture faced difficulties dealing with Yi Futian, it would only take one command for the Imperial Palace to deal with him. Now, since the matter had involved Emperor Yi Qing, regardless of whether it was proven, it would justify capturing Yi Futian first then investigating. Princess Donghuang looked into the distance. She seemed to be deep in thought and didn't reply to the person behind her. After being silent for a while, she then said, "Deploy someone to monitor him. Don't capture him just yet. Yi Futian is now the ruler of the original realm and has enormous influence. If he isn't actually related to Emperor Yi Qing, then the whole affair will be a mistake, and he would likely hold a grudge against the Imperial Palace as a result. The decision shall be made after everything is thoroughly investigated." "All right," the person behind her answered. He wasn't concerned that Yi Futian would escape. If the Imperial Palace really wanted to get Yi Futian, the only path left for him was to run to another world to hide. Otherwise, where could he escape to with the Imperial Palace after him? "I'll arrange it," the cultivator said before leading the group to leave. They went to deploy people to monitor Yi Futian's every move. Princess Donghuang did order the Divine Prefecture cultivators not to tell anyone else about this. But since they could think of it, the other organizations in the Divine Prefecture would likely be able to think of it as well. If what they had speculated turned out to be true, their actions would alert Yi Futian and prompt him to try to escape. As such, they must still have a grasp of Yi Futian's whereabouts at all times. Ziwei Segmentum. Inside the Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian had been feeling uneasy for the past few days. He had a bad feeling about the situation. It was all still related to the battle on that day. Jieyu and Yusheng both returned and reunited with him. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, and he was indeed happy. But afterward, he was worried. During the battle, the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture mentioned that they had investigated him. In addition, Shi Qiao also reminded them. Now that Yusheng had returned, it was likely that those from the Divine Prefecture were even more suspicious now. While the Divine Prefecture was extremely distant from here, the top forces would still be able to find out many things. Unless all 9 states just vanished, there would be no way he could cover up his past. As long as they continued to investigate, even if there were no clues, the forces in the Divine Prefecture would still become suspicious. When that happened, it would cause great trouble for him. Just then, a figure arrived, speeding through the skies. In an instant, he landed before Yi Futian. It was Feng Gai. A concerned expression appeared on his face. He said to Yi Futian, "Your suspicion was right. There are already rumors about you starting to spread there. I'm afraid this ain't looking good for you." "What rumor?" Yi Futian's heart trembled a little as he looked at the Feng Gai. He had a feeling that it wasn't anything positive. "There's news saying that you could be related to Emperor Yi Qing, that you could be his successor or even his descendant," Feng Gai said. Yi Futian's pupils constricted a little. It seemed that his feeling was right. The inevitable had happened. Chapter 2394. How would they deal with him? Although Qingzhou City had already disappeared, the history of Yi Futian's development could not be wiped away. In the 9 states, if one really wanted to investigate, they would be able to find out that he was born in Qingzhou City. If it were just his place of birth, it wouldn't be worthy of suspicion. However, his growth, gifts, and the status that Yusheng had today, all of it pointed to an extraordinary background. Furthermore, when he was cultivating in the 9 states, there were details and hints that led others to speculate that he was related to Emperor Yi Qing. Of course, this relation couldn't be proven because Qingzhou City had already vanished. Other than Yusheng, Jieyu, and his teacher Hua Fenglu. No one knew about his secrets. As such, the most they could do was to speculate. As for his true origin, it was even less likely that people would find out about it since he himself didn't even know. Well then, who knew? Why did Emperor Yi Qing treat him that way back then? What was the relationship between them? The people who spread the rumors out there clearly had ulterior motives. In the Divine Prefecture, Emperor Yi Qing was taboo. The same went for the original realm. Even a statue of Emperor Yi Qing wouldn't be tolerated, let alone someone related to him. Clearly, the person who spread the rumor wanted to use the Imperial Palace's power to destroy him. What situation would he be facing after this? He had no way of knowing. Donghuang the Great was a prodigy of the era. He had united the land of the Divine Prefecture and driven the path of martial arts to flourish. Ignoring all else and just focusing on Donghuang the Great himself, he was an unparalleled, marvelous individual. But how would he deal with people and things that had anything to do with Emperor Yi Qing? One could roughly guess based on what happened to Snow Ape back then. Emperor Yi Qing was a taboo figure in the Divine Prefecture. No one dared to mention him. Perhaps it was because he was taboo in the eyes of Donghuang the Great, and no one dared to provoke him. Fang Gai looked toward Yi Futian after he'd told him about the situation. Yi Futian had been calm all along. It seemed that he was thinking about something. At this moment, Fang Gai realized that the rumors out there could actually be real. Yi Futian was actually related to Emperor Yi Qing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm now and not even say a word. No wonder. Fang Gai sighed. It was no wonder Yi Futian's talents were almost unmatched in this era, regardless of whether it was Four Corner Village or out in the world, or when facing the inheritance of great emperors. On every occasion, he had displayed unbelievable talent. It was as though receiving the inheritance of great emperors was as simple as grabbing something from his own pocket. All of it could be easily cracked and understood. Fang Gai had long thought that Yi Futian's talents, which saw nearly no limit, were possibly owed to an extraordinary background. But he didn't expect that it would be because he was related to Emperor Yi Qing. If it were true, was it even possible for the Divine Prefecture Imperial Palace to let him off? At this moment, Fang Gai was greatly concerned for Yi Futian. This was different from antagonizing the various forces of the Divine Prefecture. While those forces all wanted to deal with Yi Futian, they weren't united, and Yi Futian fended them off with just one battle at the Heavenly Mandate Academy. But if the Imperial Palace wanted to deal with them, they would be powerless. The entire land of the Divine Prefecture had to follow the orders of the Imperial Palace. Just then, a divine light of space flashed from the great matrix of inheritance inside the Imperial Palace. It was followed by waves of powerful auras that quickly spread out in the area. A group of powerful cultivators dashed through the air from afar. These were Devil World cultivators. It was Yusheng arriving with reinforcements. Yusheng knew the most about Yi Futian's identity. He knew almost everything about Yi Futian. After he'd received the news, he immediately came over to see Yi Futian. Yusheng. Yi Futian saw that Yusheng was coming and called out to him. Yusheng landed directly beside Yi Futian. He looked at the people around them. "We should go for a walk," Yi Futian said. The two of them left and came to the top of a building. "You can come to the Devil World with me," Yusheng said to Yi Futian. After he'd heard the news, he came right away intending to bring Yi Futian back to the Devil World. Once Yi Futian entered the Devil World and was under the aegis of the Devil Emperor, even Donghuang the Great wouldn't find it easy to deal with him. Furthermore, with Yi Futian's talents, he would be greatly valued even in the Devil World. Yi Futian didn't answer. His gaze extended far into the distance. From Qingzhou City back then till now, there was an invisible hand controlling everything, including the path of his growth. Where would his godfather be now? Who was he, and who was Yusheng? His godfather must know the answers to all of this. He didn't come out to stop all this from happening. Perhaps this wasn't a dead end. Yusheng, have you thought that if even you already received the news and came here, how is it possible that the cultivators over at the Imperial Palace don't know yet? Yi Futian said, "If they really wanted to do anything to me, naturally, they would already be monitoring here. Leave? I don't think it's that simple. It could even infuriate those on their side. Rather than leave, it's better for us to watch and see what happens." Let's observe what the imperial palace will do. You're going to admit it? Yusheng looked toward Futian. Even someone as calm and steadfast as him was getting a little nervous. This whole thing would have too great an implication. It could cause the doom of Futian. He couldn't keep his cool. Did you know that back then in the Nine State, I met Princess Donghuang several times? Now that the news has spread, how is it possible that she can't guess what's happening? Futian said. The first time he met Princess Donghuang was in the Beast Mountain of Qingzhou City. She had been there to capture the snow ape, and he had been there too. If he claimed that that was a coincidence because he was from Qingzhou, what happened afterward would verify that it was unlikely to be a mere coincidence. As long as the people from the imperial palace investigated it, they would find many clues that would lead to the truth. The next time they saw each other, Princess Donghuang brought Mr. Du of the cottage away. It was nearly impossible to hide all of this. How are you going to admit it? Yusheng asked. Futian looked toward him and answered, because of a coincidence, I encountered Emperor Yi Qing's remnant soul while I was sightseeing in the Beast Mountains of Qingzhou City. I was then enlightened by his teachings. It was now impossible to claim that they were totally unrelated, but saying it this way would already explain many things. The statement could be understood differently. The remnant soul's teachings could be just advice, or it could be an inheritance. Yusheng's brows were locked tight together. Would the imperial palace really let Futian go just by saying that? But at the very least, they could not admit that there was any other form of relationship between Futian and Emperor Yi Qing. It could only be an accidental encounter at Qingzhou City. If there were any other connections between them, it would be even less likely that the imperial palace would let Futian go. It's the best that we can do, Futian said softly. Everything else would be up to fate. This was the problem that he was worried about all along. There was bound to be one day where some traces of his past would resurface and expose him, but he didn't expect those from the divine prefecture to be the ones behind it. He didn't even know who intentionally revealed the news, but he knew that it had been done with truly vicious intentions. Outside, cultivators from all across the world rushed toward the Ziwei segmentum. Futian turned out to be related to Emperor Yi Qing. Naturally, they would want to see how things would be resolved. At this time, outside the Ziwei segmentum, in the boundless space of void, the most powerful organizations of the divine prefecture had already arrived. They were unable to pass through the teleportation grand matrix, so they had to fly over. They stood atop the celestial skies and looked over at the Ziwei segmentum. This whole segmentum was the legacy of a great emperor who stood at the apex of the ancient era. Today, it was controlled by Futian. However, the vicissitude of the situation was certainly unexpected. Futian was said to be related to Emperor Yi Qing. The imperial palace probably wouldn't let this slip. This phenomenal cultivator, who had risen from the heavenly mandate realm, made a name all across the divine prefecture and even attracted the attention of various apex cultivators, would have his life threatened. How would the imperial palace deal with Futian? Chapter 2395, Confrontation. Ziwei Imperial Palace. At the peak of Ziwei Temple, there was a terrifying starry pattern, much like a grand matrix that was connected to the firmament. At this moment, there was a man sitting cross-legged, clad in all white and with white hair. It was none other than Futian. His eyes closed tightly. In his mind, an infinite spatial world appeared, and a world presented itself. This world was populated with numerous cultivators, who were all busy and cultivating. In this picture, there were some places where the imageries were clearer than others. Many figures materialized. It was as if they were not far away from him, and they seemed to be coming to where he was. At the same time, inside the imperial palace, a group of people burst out and levitated into the air, heading outside. Gradually, many powerful auras permeated from a distance. Among them were many major figureheads who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path. Their auras were mighty as they approached this magnificent imperial palace and stopped just outside of it, above the firmament. Their eyes focused on the area in front of them as their divine consciousness swept inside. Many of these top figures seemed to have no qualms in doing so. It seemed as if they didn't care at all what place this was. However, after they arrived, they didn't act rashly but remained perched there. Gradually, more and more forces arrived closer to Ziwei Imperial Palace. The Ziwei Imperial Palace was vast, but the cultivators who were cultivating here were not ordinary either. When their divine consciousness was released, they could cover a massive space in an instant, including the entire Ziwei Imperial Palace. For them, distance was not a familiar concept. Many cultivators in Ziwei Imperial Palace were also in the sky above, keeping watch with cold and indifferent gazes. These people were rude enough. They had descended directly on the Imperial Palace. "You have come here uninvited. What is it that you want?" Renhuang Chun stood high above the sky and queried coldly. Not long ago, there was a similar scenario that took place at the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Could this be a repeat of that situation? Nothing at all. We are just here to marvel at the world created by Ziwei the Great, someone responded calmly. They stood at a distance and didn't seem to want to gain entry into the Imperial Palace. It seemed as if they were here purely as onlookers. Renhuang Chun couldn't say much when he heard the reply. They had not tried to enter by force, so what could he do? And in terms of strength, there were supreme existences who had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path, so that even if he were to make a move, he could not possibly contend with them. In fact, these were not the only ones who had arrived. Futian, above the temple, could perceive that there were several other principalities, far away from Ziwei Imperial Palace. They were on their way here. They were not close to Ziwei Imperial Palace yet, but these forces included cultivators from the Dark World, the Empty Divine Realm, and many others. This time, other worlds also took an interest. After all, too much was involved this time. It had to do with Emperor Yi Qing. He was someone who had fought side by side with Donghuang the Great. He was one of the two emperors who had unified divine prefecture. If Yi Futian was really his descendant, what would be the significance of this revelation? Yi Futian, whose surname was the same as Emperor Yi Qing's, and the gap in their ages roughly matched up. If so, would Donghuang the Great send someone here to execute Yi Futian? Presumably, an answer would become apparent soon. Outside, mighty cultivators gathered, including cultivators from all sides and cultivators from other worlds and various principalities in the divine prefecture. Inside Ziwei Imperial Palace, there were also many who gathered together. Everyone who was associated with Yi Futian had arrived. This included the cultivators from the Lost Clan, the Heavenly Mandate Academy, as well as cultivators from other major principalities in the original realm. They were all waiting with heightened alert. Everyone understood the serious crisis Yi Futian was facing this time may be the most dangerous yet. Many crises in the past had the possibility of being resolved. Even when the forces of the divine prefecture were bearing down on them, they had been able to fight against it. However, if the Imperial Palace wanted Yi Futian's life, he may have no choice but to die. There was no one who was not nervous, especially those who were closest to Yi Futian, including Yu Sheng and Hua Jieyu. At this moment, in the distance, there was a powerful aura that diffused towards this side. The divine light of the space twinkled, and rays of light illuminated the space. A horrific aura descended. A group of cultivators materialized from the light beam and descended above the firmament, just like a pantheon of gods. "She's here." The hearts of all these cultivators trembled. Everyone was waiting for this moment, and it was finally here. Rumors had been circulating in the original realm, so it was impossible that the Imperial Palace had not heard of them by now, so they must have received the information. And if they knew, it only stood to reason that they would be here sooner rather than later. Indeed, as they turned their eyes, they saw that Princess Donghuang had personally descended upon Ziwei Imperial Palace. That unparalleled figure, like the most revered goddess, was heading towards the Ziwei Imperial Palace. Yi Futian, who had been keeping his eyes closed, had already seen it all. At this moment, he opened his eyes and looked above the firmament. He saw the arrival of the cultivators, led by Princess Donghuang, and the figures behind her were dazzled with divine light. It was as if they were all divine generals. This scenario looked so familiar to Yi Futian. He was experiencing déjà vu. More importantly, he had seen it more than once. On Mount Tianyao in the city of Qingzhou, above the Book Mountain in the Eastern Barren Territory, the Snow Ape and the Master had all experienced it. Now, it was his turn. The scenario was the same. and the one who came was still Princess Donghuang. The only difference was that the princess had become even more dazzling and radiant, and her cultivation was more terrifying than ever. She was no longer the girl of yesteryear. This time, would the ending be the same as before? Yi Futian didn't know, and no one else knew. Your Royal Highness. Many cultivators from Divine Prefecture bowed to salute her. No matter what level these cultivators were at, they must maintain a certain degree of respect when facing the only daughter of Donghuang the Great. Even those who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path dared not exhibit any ego in front of the princess. Princess Donghuang nodded slightly but did not say anything more. Her gaze was fixed in one place, and that was above the temple, where Yi Futian was cultivating. At this moment, Yi Futian was sitting without anyone else beside him. He looked so alone. The entire Ziwei Imperial Palace was shrouded in an oppressive aura, and everyone's divine consciousness was focused on one person alone, Yi Futian. However, under the divine consciousness of these top figures, anyone would feel an unparalleled pressure, no matter who they were. But Yi Futian just sat there quietly, with a holy luminescence that seemed to drape over him. When he stood up, his back was straight and seemed to be rooted firmly. No matter what happened, he would face it on his feet. Your Royal Highness, Yi Futian greeted with courtesy and reverence as he bowed slightly. Have you heard about those rumors on the outside? Princess Donghuang asked directly without beating around the bush. I have, Yi Futian replied honestly. He couldn't possibly have denied it. Is there any relationship between Ren Huangyi and Emperor Yi Qing? Princess Donghuang asked, her eyes fixed on him intently. Yi Futian also looked into her eyes and responded, There is? Yi Futian's voice fell, and the space turned silent. The divine consciousnesses of countless cultivators from Divine Prefecture were fastened on him. Yi Futian had admitted outright that he had some connection to Emperor Yi Qing. Princess Donghuang, likewise, also focused her attention on the white-haired man who was atop the temple. However, the cultivators from Ziwei Imperial Palace and the Heavenly Mandate Academy were concentrating their attention on her at the moment, and they were a little nervous. The next decision that the princess made would impact Yi Futian's fate. How are you connected? Princess Donghuang questioned. Does Princess remember me? Yi Futian looked at Princess Donghuang and asked. When I was 16, I saw Princess from a distance on the Beast Mountain of Qingzhou City. When he first laid eyes on Princess Donghuang, he felt that there might be a fateful encounter between the two of them. And later, indeed, they met again. But did that encounter refer to the situation they were presently facing? Vaguely, replied Princess Donghuang. I grew up in the city of Qingzhou. I was born an ordinary person who cultivated in Qingzhou Academy for a time. When I was 16, I strayed onto Beast Mountain by mistake and saw a statue. It wasn't until later that I learned that it was taboo in the Divine Prefecture, and that the statue was of Emperor Yi Qing. By pure happenstance, I received a trace of Emperor Yi Qing's will, which altered my destiny, and the Snow Ape Emperor surrendered to me. Later, Princess descended with other cultivators, and I witnessed the last battle of the Snow Ape Emperor. It was there that I saw Princess for the first time. Everyone looked at Yi Futian. It seemed that he had inherited the will of Emperor Yi Qing from his youth. This was also a very good explanation as to why he was able to suppress all those genius talents so far, and that no one had been able to compete with him. As someone who had inherited the will of a great emperor in his youth, and it was no less than the will of Emperor Yi Qing, he had to be a peerless figure who stood out among everyone in the lower worlds. Therefore, this must have been the basis for how Yi Futian's strength and development. Many found his explanation quite believable. Maybe he had omitted some of the details, but the general timeline sounded true enough. As for the rumors that Yi Futian was the heir of Emperor Yi Qing, this possibility could almost be ruled out altogether, especially for those privy to some inside information. As for both of them sharing Yi as the same surname, perhaps it was just a coincidence. Of course, he might also be hiding something. For example, he did not just receive something as simple as a wisp of the great emperor's will. Princess Donghuang stared deeply at him. Her eyes were so profoundly beautiful that it was impossible to discern what she was truly thinking. Is it really just as simple as a wisp of the will? Princess Donghuang asked. Princess, there was only a wisp of will left by Emperor Yi Qing in the statue at the time. Otherwise, with the power of a great emperor, why would he stay in Qingzhou City and wait for its destruction? Yi Futian continued, if the princess still doesn't believe me, you can go to Nandu Nation to investigate my birth further. There was no chance that I could be connected with anyone who's a great emperor. Why did Qingzhou City disappear? Princess Donghuang continued. I have no idea what happened after I took my teacher away. I didn't even know that Qingzhou City had disappeared, Yi Futian replied. Princess Donghuang asked several questions in a row. Then ensued another silence. If it was just Yi Futian who had inherited a wisp of Emperor Yi Qing's will, then this matter could go either way. Because it was just the will of Emperor Yi Qing, and only by chance, it all depended on how Princess Donghuang chose to handle the matter. No one spoke. The cultivators from all top forces in the Divine Prefecture only dared to observe in secret darkness from a distance. No one dared to say a word. Emperor Yi Qing was not a topic to be talked about openly. Even if everyone understood what was going on, they couldn't say anything. Next to Princess Donghuang, someone spoke to her via voice transmission, Your Royal Highness, whether what he said is credible or not, you can't let him go. It's better to be safe than sorry. What if there was a deeper connection between Yi Futian and Emperor Yi Qing? If one day Yi Futian were to really step into that legendary realm, what would happen then? Therefore, they might want to kill him unnecessarily than entertain the unthinkable Princess Donghuang still appeared tranquil. The cultivators from all the worlds looked on in the distance. At this moment, a voice from the dark world spoke up. It was a long time ago when the two emperors turned against each other, and Donghuang the Great raised his hand against Emperor Yi Qing. Now, so many years later, Donghanag Imperial Palace won't spare cultivator who happened to obtain just some trace of Emperor Yi Qing's will by chance? This voice sounded rather sarcastic. The cultivators from the dark world had never disguised their desire of wanting Yi Futian dead, but now they seemed to be speaking up on Yi Futian's behalf, which was somewhat intriguing. Yi Futian, come to the empty divine realm, and we will give you a safe haven. At this moment, another voice spoke, and it was a cultivator from the empty divine realm. However, this suggestion was full of bad intentions. Under the circumstances, those from Donghuang Imperial Palace would be more motivated to move against Yi Futian, an unspeakably ruthless scheme. At this moment, a man walked behind Yi Futian and stood there quietly. The man seemed to be dressed in the demonic mail. He had an exceptionally domineering spirit, and it was none other than Yu Sheng. After Yu Sheng made his presence known, a group of cultivators was behind him, protecting him. This time, the people they were facing were not ordinary folks, and the devil world didn't really want Yu Sheng to intervene. But if Yu Sheng wanted to make a stance, there was not much they could do. But Yu Sheng stood there as if to make a statement. It seemed that as soon as Princess Donghuang made the decision against Yi Futian, Yu Sheng would be the worst enemy Divine Prefecture had ever seen, no matter the cost to himself. Princess Donghuang glanced at Yu Sheng, then looked back at Yi Futian and asked, You said you received the will of Emperor Yi Qing. So, who is he, exactly? The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture had thought of this as well. If Yi Futian explained his own origin, then what about Yu Sheng? Obviously, this was an oversight. He was still unable to clearly explain who he really was, or where he was from. I am curious to know that too, but perhaps only the Devil Emperor in the Devil World knows the answer. Yi Futian responded. His answer was scoffed at by those from the Divine Prefecture. Clearly, it was less than convincing. And Yi Futian, didn't he know? Princess, he is lying. Next to Princess Donghuang, the voice transmission asked her, Did Princess ever know of his existence? Princess Donghuang nodded slightly. Perhaps Yi Futian was the heir selected by Emperor Yi Qing himself. It cannot be as simple as chance, the person continued via voice transmission. An oppressed aura now enveloped the space. Princess Donghuang looked at Yi Futian and said, Yes or no? Follow me to the Imperial Palace, and we will sort everything out there. Yi Futian, would you like to come with us for a little trip? There was a slight change in Yi Futian's eyes. He was not too clear on what had transpired back then, but if he and Emperor Yi Qing really had some connections, then no matter the kind of person Donghuang the Great was, he would never let him off the hook. Once they found out the secrets he'd been hiding, he would most certainly not be allowed to live. If Princess doesn't believe me, why waste time taking me with you? Yi Futian kept his composure and replied, but his heart was getting colder. Chapter 2397, Master of the Segmentum. Yi Futian's reply silenced the space again. He had actually refused a request from Princess Dongwang, declining to follow the princess to the Imperial Palace. It's finished. In the area surrounding Ziwei Imperial Palace, those cultivators from the Divine Prefecture thought there would be no doubt about the impending conflict. Yi Futian's refusal implied that he may indeed have other secrets and that the Imperial Palace would have no choice but to take action against him. Sure enough, several cultivators stepped out from behind Princess Dongwang. One of them had a frightening aura. They were surrounded by divine light, and it was none other than Du Yu, the Spear Emperor. He was one of the direct disciples of Donghuang the Great, and Yi Futian had seen him in action before. He was exceptionally powerful. Buzz! A godly spear appeared in his hand, puffing out a terrifying light as he floated towards the temple where Yi Futian was. Clearly, in the eyes of those from the Imperial Palace, Yi Futian's refusal was equivalent to a crime against the princess. Princess Donghuang said nothing. She seemed to be silently condoning the Spear Emperor's action. Behind her, a group of people floated forward, and all of them were releasing a powerful aura, oppressing the Ziwei Imperial Palace. Yi Futian had the support of the cultivators from the Devil World behind him. If they were to join in, a battle would be inevitable. Yu Sheng took a step forward, and the cultivators from the Devil World followed suit. But the eyes of old Demon Tunshin sharpened. The Devil World had no right to meddle in the matter at hand. To confront the Imperial Palace of Divine Prefecture, in the land of the original realm no less, would be both disadvantageous and foolish. This was really an internal matter within the Divine Prefecture. Apprehend him and take him away. Anyone who dares to interfere with the business of the Imperial Palace will be killed without exceptions. A cold voice came out of a cultivator from the Imperial Palace. The person's aura was beyond horrifying, and he was someone that Yi Futian had never seen before. He was a supreme cultivator who had survived the second divine tribulation of Great Path, a peak existence closest to the level of the Great Emperor. Boom! A wave of demonic might erupted from Yu Sheng as dark demonic currents tossed and howled. Dark demonic eyes swept towards Princess Donghuang. Whoever dares touch him today will have to answer to me. As long as I live, anyone who touches him will die, Yu Sheng proclaimed. His statement was a cause of concern for the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture. They frowned but did not stop what they were doing. Rays of divine light showered down to envelop the temple below. This sight was so familiar. Yi Futian felt like he had seen it all before. This time, it was finally his turn. Was his fate the same as the Snow Ape Emperor or as his teacher, Mr. Du? Battle to the death, or be taken away as a prisoner? Yu Sheng, stand down. What Yi Futian said took Yu Sheng by surprise. He turned around to look at Yi Futian. The demonic might roared upon him. Stand down! Yi Futian looked at him and repeated himself calmly. If there were to be a fight, he rather let it just be him. There was no need to involve Yu Sheng. Here, unless Donghuang the Great comes in person, it won't be easy to take me away, Yi Futian said matter-of-factly. Yu Sheng watched him and was silent for a few moments, then withdrew. The cultivators from the Devil World were still guarding close by. For cultivators from the Devil World, whether Yi Futian lived or died was not their concern. Besides, they would really like to see the abilities of Yu Sheng's brother. After Yu Sheng and the others backed away, the light of the matrix above the temple lit up suddenly. Then, beams of divine light rushed into the sky, and high above the boundless sky, the scenery seemed to change as if it were being fast-forwarded. The clouds and winds were morphing and surging, akin to changes of nature. The sun and the moon moved in rapid succession, and with a single thought, night had fallen. Above the firmament, a starry sky world came into being. Countless stars were shining like countless pairs of eyes. The starlight fell as if this was the real world, the real Ziwei segmentum. Starlight fell upon Yi Futian, making his long silvery hair appear even more luminous as he bathed in the divine light, standing quietly under the stars. I have never done any evil deeds to the Divine Prefecture, and I have always defended the original realm. I will not hesitate to fight for the original realm. So, if your Royal Highness still insists on taking me away against my will, I will have no choice but to resist," said Futian. Watching this exchange, people who were closest to the Heavenly Mandate Academy and to Futian felt an immense sorrow in their hearts. Did it all come down to this? They knew very well what would ensue following Futian's resistance and his declaration of war with the Imperial Palace. This would push the situation to the point of no return. Those principalities from the Divine Prefecture held grudges against Futian. They smirked silently. This was no more than Futian seeking his own death. If there were ever a chance for him to get out of this mess, he had completely squandered it by now. He was courting death. Above the firmament, the Spear Emperor, Du Yu, and other cultivators from the Imperial Palace focused their attention on Futian, who was below. Divine lights shone brightly upon them and yielded terribly sharp auras. The aura that hovered above the long spear in Du Yu's hands was even more appalling. He looked at Futian with a slight pity in his eyes. Did this worm actually think that he could shake the tree? Did Futian really want to go to war with the Imperial Palace? He took a step forward, and the long spear in his hand pierced straight down. Instantaneously, a long spear pierced through heaven and earth, descending from the void all the way down, slaughtering towards Futian. It was as if this strike would traverse the void and take Futian down. Buzz! However, at this moment, the boundless starlight above the void sprinkled down, and those lights fell directly in front of Futian, where they turned into a starry light screen. The Spear Emperor's long spear arrived and blasted right on the light screen, which blocked the attack. The light screen was so brilliant that it shut out all the attacks, ones that came from a peak Renhuang. Futian continued to stand there quietly and didn't move a muscle. It was as if he had absolute confidence in himself. An exceedingly horrific aura came down from the sky, causing the Spear Emperor to look slightly concerned. The starlight had illuminated the entire Z-Way segmentum. He looked up at the firmament and saw that there was a heavenly might that was descending. The countless stars seemed to have transformed into a massive and boundless face, the face of a deity. Z-Way the Great. This is the Starry Cultivation Court. All the cultivators from Divine Prefecture looked up into the sky, as if the world had now coincided with the world of the Starry Cultivation Court. They looked quite surprised. Could it be that the entire Z-Way segmentum was now shrouded by the will of the Great Emperor? The Starry Sky World was the Z-Way segmentum. Futian had inherited the will of Z-Way the Great and gained control over the Starry Sky World. He was able to awaken the will of Z-Way the Great, causing the change to occur in heaven and on earth as the heavenly bodies shifted. In Z-Way segmentum, Futian was its true master. Buzz. At this moment, a star above the sky lit up with horrific starlight. It was aimed directly at the Spear Emperor, Du Yu. Du Yu's face altered a bit when he saw the extremely bright star release terrible starlight, heading right at him. It was an imperial star. He raised the long spear in his hand and stepped into the void. As the long spear pierced forward, it spat out infinite divine light to counter the light that had descended from the starry sky. When the two beams of light collided, the spear will was obliterated. That terrifying aura eradicated everything in its path as it continued down. The Spear Emperor was repelled by it. His body was knocked straight into the air. Boom! His body fell hard on the ground, creating an opening in the ground. Du Yu's body was nowhere to be found because it had been blasted deep into the ground. Chapter 2398, Feng Ru. What was happening shocked everyone watching. Futian had leveraged the power of the starry sky to fight, and all the stars in the heavens seemed to be under his direct command. The will of the Great Emperor was his will. Futian had inherited the will of Z-Way the Great in the Starry Cultivation Court back then, and had completely integrated with the will of the Great Emperor. The Spear Emperor, Du Yu, and the Divine General of Divine Prefecture Imperial Palace were blasted beneath the ground by the starlight summoned by Futian, who didn't even move. Under this segmentum, it seemed that he was the master of this universe, and no one could usurp his authority. This is crazy, many thought. In the distance, people from the top principalities in the Divine Prefecture were watching in awe. In one direction, where the cultivators from Donghua Domain Chief's manor had congregated, Ning Yuan's eyes swept through the space and zoomed in on Yi Futian. For him to have declared war on the imperial palace, Yi Futian had now burned many bridges and dug his own grave. So what if he was in charge of this segmentum? The entity in front of him was no longer just the top power of the divine prefecture, but the principality that dominated and ruled all of the divine prefecture. The will of Ziwei the Great might be strong, but he was a fallen great emperor, after all. Now, only Donghuang the Great was the ruler of all of the divine prefecture. Those divine generals in the void were brilliant with divine lights shining on their bodies, and a terrifying aura descended. Those sharp gazes were directed at Yi Futian, but they made no move against him. Diyu had been suppressed by a single blow, and they didn't think they would fare any better than him. The same fate would probably befall them as well. In this world, perhaps only the cultivators at the very top had the ability to deal with Yi Futian. The people from the Heavenly Mandate Academy didn't feel elated when they saw the sight before them. On the contrary, they felt a sense of profound sorrow. Gu Donglu had been cultivating and improving his cultivation in the Starry Cultivation Court in the days past, but he was still powerless when faced with today's situation. Once upon a time, their teacher Mr. Du had been taken away in this manner. Now, facing these principalities of the divine prefecture, his junior brother had the power to battle them, and he was bold enough to resist. This was nothing less than open defiance against the authority of the gods. If their teacher had known that their little junior brother had progressed to this stage, he would probably be incredibly pleased. The imperial palace, on the other hand, would probably put an end to this. And when he thought about that, he couldn't help but felt a deep sadness. Once, he had thought that they would have victory over all of their opponents, no matter who they were, as long as they were given the luxury of time. But what about the likes of Donghuang the Great? There was only desperation now. No matter how long they were given, they could only revere that which was the legend of the world. Your Royal Highness, I don't want to fight, but it seems that I don't have a choice. Yi Futian levitated above the temple and said to Princess Donghuang, "Whatever happens today, no matter the outcome, I am responsible for my actions. I hope that it will not affect anybody else." Very well. Princess Donghuang looked at Yi Futian's and agreed to his request. Thank you very much. Yi Futian nodded slightly. Hearing what Yi Futian had to say, the cultivators from Ziwei Imperial Palace and the Heavenly Mandate Academy sighed. If something were to happen to Yi Futian, could Ziwei Imperial Palace and the Heavenly Mandate Academy be able to survive in this troubled world? Today's world was in utter chaos. With all these worlds upon them, there was no telling how many of them had set their eyes on the Starry Cultivation Court in Ziwei Imperial Palace. Once Yi Futian was no more, the alliance between the Heavenly Mandate Academy, Ziwei Segmentum, and the Lost Clan would very likely disintegrate as well. Then, it would spell nothing but pure disaster for all of them. These several great forces could connect and remain stable in these troubled times because Yi Futian had played a decisive role. Take him, Princess Donghuang spat with immeasurable coldness. Immediately behind her, several extremely powerful beings stepped forward. The auras upon them were quite astonishing. With all the worlds coming, the forces representing the divine prefecture were also much more substantial this time. After all, the original realm was part of the divine prefecture. Yi Futian perceived those horrific auras and wondered, how many powerful characters like these were there inside the imperial palace of the divine prefecture? A ray of light illuminated Yi Futian, and in the next moment, his figure disappeared from right where he was standing. Many looked up in the sky and saw Yi Futian's figure appeared above the firmament. He seemed to have integrated into the starry sky world as an unparalleled figure appeared behind him. It was the phantom of Ziwei the Great. The authority of heaven descended, and the horror in the atmosphere reached the peak as the coercion now overwhelmed the entire Ziwei segmentum. At this moment, in the Ziwei segmentum, as well as the many starry worlds, countless creatures raised their heads to look into the firmament. They had felt that heavenly might, and with a tremendous shock, they were wondering what was happening. Your Royal Highness, let me reiterate that I have no intention of fighting with the Imperial Palace. However, if the princess refuses to let the matter go, I would fight using the starry sky. Your Royal Highness should know that the previous princess of Ziwei Imperial Palace perished under the starry sky. Above the firmament, a voice was heard, full of a supreme godly might. Once, the previous palace lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace had intended on seizing the will of the great emperor and had been killed on the spot by Yi Futian, using the will of the great emperor. Afterward, Yi Futian inherited the position as the palace lord of the imperial palace. This event was witnessed by many cultivators in the divine prefecture. The imperial palace should have heard something about that as well. If Yi Futian could fight by leveraging the will of Ziwei the Great, the strength he exerted would be the same as it was then. Perhaps, under the prowess of a great emperor, no one would be able to compete with him. No wonder Yi Futian was so confident that he asked Yushang and the others to stand down. Under this starry sky, unless it was Donghuang the Great himself who was here, Yi Futian had no fear of anyone. Under the starry sky, the cultivators from the imperial palace were a little hesitant. They did not expect that in the land of the original realm, they would be hindered by a Runhuang of the seventh realm. At this time, a man who had been standing there quietly now walked out from behind Princess Donghuang. He was wearing a cape with a hood on his head, and now he took off the hood as he raised his head slightly to look up into the space high above. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be no more than 40. He had an elegant and scholarly temperament. There did not seem to be any aggression from him. Instead, he appeared aloof and detached. Previously, he stood quietly behind the princess just like everybody else from the divine prefecture, inconspicuous and easily looked over. But the moment he walked out and stood under the starry sky, everyone could feel the exceptional temperament about him. He stood there as if he was the master of this world. Who is he? Many Renhuang from Divine Prefecture did not recognize this man, but some top figures in the other worlds had made out who this elegant and erudite person was. They were amazed that he was the one who had been protecting Princess Donghuang. Behind Yusheng, old Demon Tunshin saw the middle-aged man and whispered, Feng Ru. This was a contemporaneous existence of his, in an era when even Donghuang the Great was an unknown. Who is he? Yusheng asked old Demon Tunshin, clearly feeling the importance of the man from the expression in old Demon Tunshin's eyes. Thousands of years would have taken his cultivation to the peak just below the great emperor. He is an existence known to have the most probability of impacting the imperial realm. Now that many years had passed, he is probably infinitely closer to that realm except for the shackle of the heavenly path, old Demon Tunshin explained. Chapter 2399, Peak Beneath the Emperor. Yi Futian surveyed the area below and saw Feng Ru drift upwards. In the sky high above, he stood there quietly, surrounded by divine light. A brilliant image radiated outward from his location. It was a splendid vista, a scaled-down version of a much larger world. Vision of the world. Everyone raised their heads to look around Feng Ru. The vision that appeared was an entity all on its own. The power of the surrounding heaven and earth poured into it with insanity. It was as if the vision of the world was a world of a higher degree that could borrow the power of the great path from the outside world and integrate it into this tiny world to be used. Feng Ru stood there quietly, unbelievably tranquil. Just by standing there casually, it was clear that all the power from the heavens was under his control as if he was the master of this universe. It seems that Feng Ru has already been exploring that kind of realm. His splendid vista is now become more developed, forming a world of its own. The rules inside of it have already surpassed the rules of the great path on the outside world. Some top cultivators marveled silently as they witnessed the sight. Feng Ru was a powerful existence who had achieved his fame millenniums ago. For countless years, he must have been pursuing and exploring that supreme realm, seeking a breakthrough, hindered only by the shackles of heavenly path. Presumably, the two had struck a deal for him to follow Donghuang the Great willingly. Perhaps, Donghuang the Great had agreed to give him some guidance here and there. Otherwise, as a supreme existence, Feng Ru did not need to condescend to protect the daughter of Donghuang the Great. Except for pursuing the most supreme realm of them all, someone like Feng Ru did not need to ask for anything else, much less obey someone else and act the role of a glorified guard. Unless it was the temptation of breaking through that realm that caused his change of heart, would you like to create your own rules of the world? How difficult is it to break the shackles of the heavenly path? How can a person even begin to embark on that legendary road? Many people had the same questions, especially those who had already survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path. They were full of curiosity and anticipation. For those at that realm, there weren't many things that could interest them enough to become an actual passion. They could clearly feel that Feng might have taken a small step forward already. He stood there, and the world around him seemed to be at his disposal. Above the firmament, Futian perceived Feng mighty strength. This may be the strongest existence he had seen so far, other than the teacher, whose true strength was still a mystery. However, Feng, as he stood in front of him, gave him a sensation that was entirely different from the others. It was tremendously powerful, but at this time, he was no longer himself in the common sense of the word. In the Ziwei segmentum, he was its de facto master. He, whose will could be matched with the will of Ziwei the Great, had all the stars in the heavens at his command. Or, one could say that within this starry sky, he was someone akin to a god. At this moment, he saw that Feng had made a move below, and he was coming towards the starry sky. Suddenly, this vast world seemed to be shaken because of him. Futian glanced at the area below, and his thoughts shifted. Suddenly, a supreme coercion came from the sky, surrounded by the stars. When Feng was on his way up, all these stars emitted the most brilliant starlight. It came down upon Feng at the same time. It was a stunning sight when countless starlight began to fall at the same time, every starlight containing the might of the way. Buzz. The starlight illuminated the area where Feng was, but it was blocked from the outside. The imagery of the vista around Feng was like a true scaled-down world. When the starlight fell, it failed to penetrate that world, unable to break through its defense. What was even more frightening was that all the power of the heavens seemed to be guarding surround Feng, resonating with the world he created. His speed was so fast that it approached the limits of what was possible. It was hard to detect with the naked eye as he rushed directly above the firmament. The cultivators below could no longer see any trace of Feng. There was only a ray of light, which seemed to have already entered into that brilliant starry sky world and headed towards the heaven full of stars. Because Futian was leveraging the will of Ziwei the Great, he was able to merge with a heaven full of stars. Feng had now actually gone over to attack, attempting to capture Futian. Above the firmament, everyone saw that the light became even more radiant. Only those top cultivators could perceive the situation taking place in the starry sky. The stars in the heavens seemed to be moving like real stars, gigantic and massive. These humongous stars turned into meteors and slammed down at Feng. The power that was generated from the stars that turned into meteors was plenty frightening. At the same time, many meteors fell, slamming into Feng and his miniature world. Rumble. The sky seemed to be shaking fiercely. Feng raised his head and looked up. Instantly, all the power of the heavens seemed to vibrate and resonate with him. He raised his palm, and the heavens trembled. Infinite power of the great path gathered around as if affected by his every move. The gestures of his hands seemed to influence the entire world. What a terrifying existence! Even Peak Renhuang and those who had survived the divine tribulation of the great path felt this tremendous shake-up. How strong was someone who had achieved his fame millenniums ago? As if just by a simple gesture of raising a finger pointing the void, and instantly, the sky was thoroughly shaken up. Those falling meteors that came blasting down were attacked at the same moment. Streams of light rushed above the stars. Boom! It seemed that the sky was collapsing. The people below were shocked to see that the stars were exploding and being destroyed. It seemed as if they had been attacked by an inconceivable force, and all of them collapsed at the same moment. Any star attacking Feng's direction was ultimately crushed in this madness. Incredible! The hearts of many trembled. Was this kind of power possible for mere mortals? None of them had expected that such incredulously terrifying power could be possible at the very peak of cultivation. If so, what kind of unimaginable power did the great emperor possess? Even Futian was awed by Feng's might. When he saw that so many stars had shattered and exploded, he clearly perceived that all the stars were attacked simultaneously. Under Feng Ru's finger, the power of the great path in all the heavens resonated with him. They blasted upon all the stars despite the spatial distance. He seemed to be able to take over the control of the great path power inside this world. Futian had never come into contact personally with this kind of incredible power. Although he had slayed existences who survived the second divine tribulation of the great path, he did not do so, relying purely on his own strength. Leveraging the power of Ziwei, the Great was not equivalent to using the power that belonged to himself. He hadn't yet reached that level, so it was difficult for him to really understand what that realm would feel like. Feng Ru's mighty strength made Futian realize that it would be impossible to stop Feng Ru without the power of Ziwei the Great. Most likely, this man was standing at a level closest to and just beneath that of the Great Emperor. As his mind turned, it was as if he had entered into a state of selflessness. At this moment, the stars in all the heavens were shining at the same time the heavenly might descended. The phantom of Ziwei the Great became clearer. It was as if the Great Emperor had begun to awaken. Accompanied by the incoming heavenly might, even Feng Ru felt the pressure now as he raised his head to take on that gigantic phantom of the Great Emperor. Chapter 2400, Qiankuan Finger. Futian's figure appeared there as well. He stood below the shadows of the Great Emperor, looking like the descendant of a god. As he closed his eyes, divine light flared from his body. At this moment, the stars of the celestial skies all started shining simultaneously. Futian's projection appeared on every single one of them. It was as if he existed everywhere at the same time. If I attack, then there's no going back. Senior, are you sure you want this battle? A voice echoed the void, resonating with the skies. Futian's might exerted great pressure on all of the Ziwei segmentum. He could sense Feng Ru's power and knew that normal attacks would likely not affect him. The only way was to use the might of the heavens in his attack. Divine light swirled around Feng Ru. He raised his head, looked at the celestial skies, and said, "Do it." Great emperors were akin to gods. They could not be provoked. Even someone as strong as Feng Ru would be powerless before a great emperor. However, he was only facing the will of Ziwei the Great, and not the great emperor himself. Regardless, he still wanted a sense of how powerful the might of a great emperor would be. At this instant, the splendid vista world behind him expanded dramatically. It seemed as if it was turning into an actual world. Below the starry skies, a small world appeared. When this small world manifested, it started reeling in and swallowing the powers of the great paths of the world. In the vast, boundless space, it was as if everything was resonating with the small world. Just then, endless divine lights started streaming down from the celestial skies, converging below Futian. There, a supreme sword will started to form, giving rise to a divine sword that contained the might of the skies. This divine sword seemed to be capable of slashing the skies open, merging all of the celestial stars into one to form a divine sword, someone said. The cultivators all looked up in shock. The previous lord of the imperial palace met his demise under an attack similar to this. While Feng Ru's power was nearly immeasurable, could he really endure such an attack? No one would know. After all, one could see how powerful Feng Ru was based on his attack just now, but there was no way of knowing his full power at this point. Boom! Terrifying sounds could be heard ripping through the skies. The supersonic blasts caused the air to tremble. Below, countless people from the Ziwei segmentum looked up towards the celestial skies. They saw the might of the skies forcing downwards together with the projection of Ziwei the Great. The divine sword was before the great emperor, slashing out as if it was wielded by the gods. The great paths were collapsing, crushed, and were ultimately torn into fragments. Deep, terrifying cracks appeared. It looked like an omen before the entire world, falling apart. Yet even then, the divine sword was entirely unaffected. All of the gashes that appeared in the great path couldn't stop the ray of light from the sword. It continued to travel down the turbulence of cracks and gashes. It was unstoppable. Even escape by using the power of the great path of space wouldn't be possible, as space itself was collapsing as well. An attack on this level had already exceeded the physical limits of the void realm. Atop the skies, it was as if a crack had appeared, slashed open by the divine sword. Being able to receive an attack of the will of Ziwei the Great is an honor, Fengru said as he looked up. However, even though he was a supreme being in the past, he had already passed and shouldn't continue to exist in this world. The greatest of this time should belong to this era. His voice was humble yet arrogant, overflowing with an endless might of domination. When he raised his arm, it was as though all the powers of the world started flowing towards him and converging onto his arm. At this moment, Fengru's body flared magnificently. He looked like a divine frame, unparalleled in the mortal world. As he amassed unmatched power on his arms, countless divine lights started flowing towards his fingers. The divine lights flickering and erupting from his fingertips were more potent than the sharpest blades the world had ever seen. Qingkuan finger. In the distance, old demon Tunchen, who was standing beside Yushang, said, Fengru created the legendary technique, Qingkuan finger, on his own. It's extremely powerful. Going up against the starry divine sword of Ziwei, the Great with a single finger, a demonic cultivator beside him said softly, unable to conceive what he had just heard. Although Fengru had made a name for himself thousands of years ago, it did not justify how he could be so confident. Old demon Tunchen's voice sank as he said, Didn't you sense the power contained in that single finger? The stars in the sky were crushed. This finger contained the power of the universe, and he had condensed his full power into it. While the attacks before this were all spread out, the true ultimate Qiankan finger would look like this, concentrated at a single point. Once it erupts, its power would be able to fill up and destroy my black hole whirlpool, which is said to be able to engulf the skies. He rated Fengru extremely highly. Even in his generation, there were only a handful of cultivators who had reached this level. Yushang and the other demonic cultivators were shocked by the comment. They all knew how terrifying old demon Tunchen's power of devouring was. It could literally devour everything, including celestial stars. Yet he just said that this one puny finger, upon eruption, would be able to fill his black hole whirlpool capable of devouring all matter. Every cultivator in this world has their own methods of cultivation. The cultivators of the infinite palace are skilled with the infinite, endless, and boundless. But some people are skilled with the concentration of power instead. Imagine two attacks with the same weight. Do you think it would have more explosive force when it has the magnitude of a mountain or that of a rock? Old demon Tunchen continued as he watched the two attacks in the skies nearing each other. On top of that, the Qingkuan finger isn't as simple as condensing and releasing the power of the skies. It was said that the Qingkuan finger contained a small world, compressing the power of a whole world into a micro-world, operating based on some mysterious law. It seemed to be compressing an endlessly large, supreme mythical matrix into one finger. When it erupts, its power will be unmatched. As he spoke, the might of the celestial skies continued to force downward. Even they could feel the power despite it being so high up. The projection of Ziwei, the Great, descended with the divine sword as Fengru was pointing to the sky with one finger. It was as though the two attacks weren't even on the same order of magnitude. At this moment, Fengru looked so small and vulnerable. It was as though he would be crushed by any attack at all. But at the instant when the two attacks really came into contact, the cultivator's visions were filled with a blinding light of obliteration which had erupted and deluged the skies, blocking out everything. The celestial stars were crushed and exploded in a massive chain reaction. Even the divine sword, the power of which was nearly unimaginable just moments ago, was disintegrating bit by bit. As the blast continued upwards, stars from even further out in the galaxy were obliterated as well. Many people couldn't see what was happening as the blinding light flared in the skies. Yet, when the light finally faded away, they saw that the divine sword had disappeared. Atop the skies, the projection of Ziwei the Great was still there, and so was Futian. However, his aura was precarious, and he was shaken to the core. Below him, Fengru was blasted down from the skies, and his aura was equally unstable. His posture was also not as straight as before. The might of Ziwei the Great. It is indeed as powerful as legend says. But it was only the will of a great emperor after all, Not an actual great emperor, Feng said to Yi Futian, who stood in the skies. And this wasn't your own power either, so you can't show me the true divine power. Chapter 24:01. Pleas from various forces. Yi Futian looked below. Naturally, he knew that Feng was right that the will of Ziwei the Great was hidden amongst the celestial stars. He could indeed borrow them in battle, but his plane was a little low after all. He was only 7th level Renhuang plane, so his powers were limited even after borrowing from the celestial stars, let alone in comparison with the actual Great Emperor. In fact, he didn't even manage to release 30% of the celestial powers. Otherwise, even if Feng were only one step away from becoming Great Emperor, he would still be obliterated. So what if he was as powerful as one could be short of being a Great Emperor? The will of the Great Emperor was carved into the celestial stars. The explosive power of its attack was equivalent to a portion of the power of the Great Emperor. It was just that Yi Futian couldn't unleash it fully. Of course, even then, one could see how strong Feng was. Even with such a powerful attack, all it did was make his finger bleed. It didn't actually waver him or injure his body of Wei. At this point, Feng aura was still terrifying, and the small world continued to circle him. The lights of the great paths of the skies streamed into the small world and resonated with it, contending with the divine might of the celestial stars. Princess Donghuang looked toward the figure high up in the sky and said, "I gave you a chance before. Now, I'm giving you another chance. Follow me back to the imperial palace. If you are not directly related to him, we'll close one eye and stop chasing after you. But if you continue to be stubborn..." As she paused, her eyes turned cold, and her aura became dangerously sharp. She then continued, "You will die here." As she finished speaking, several figures walked out from behind her. Their mighty aura subdued that of even the celestial skies. Every one of them was an apex cultivator, and their terrifying auras could be sensed from miles away. Feng levitated again. Divine lights surrounded him as his might fired up into the skies. The hearts of the Divine Prefecture cultivators trembled. That was the princess of the Divine Prefecture and the only daughter of Donghuang the Great. So what if Yi Futian was an unmatched genius? He was lucky that the princess was willing to give him a chance to follow her back to the imperial palace to clear up the issue. If Yi Futian didn't comply, that would mean that he had lied to her. If that were the case, she could kill her then and there. Leaving him alive would serve no purpose. He could even betray them and join the other worlds in the future. Princess Donghuang's words made many of the Divine Prefecture forces that had a grudge with Yi Futian laugh inside. Yi Futian was way too confident. He even dared to start a war with the imperial palace. If that wasn't a death wish, then what was? No place in the Divine Prefecture could accommodate him at this point. Even his attempt this time to escape into the crevices of space to hide away from the Divine Prefecture was futile. The cultivators here could travel across worlds to chase after him, so there's no way he could escape. And if he left this celestial region, he would die even faster. Without borrowing power from the celestial skies, cultivators on the level of Feng could easily deal with him. He could take Yi Futian's life with a snap of his finger. They were of a fundamentally different level. The expression of the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy and the Ziwei Segmentum all changed. They all felt a sense of despair when Princess Donghuang gave the kill order. Was there really no hope for Yi Futian? How did things become like this? At this point, it was as if every way was leading to a dead end. The cultivators from the other worlds all sneered inside. Yi Futian came out of nowhere and made a name for himself with his unparalleled talents. They even thought that a phenom of the era was about to rise from the land of the Divine Prefecture, which would become a threat to them. It was especially so for the Dark World, who had battled Yi Futian several times before. A powerful aura started to engulf the skies above Yi Futian as waves of dark divine lights started spreading towards there. The Divine Prefecture Imperial Palace cultivators frowned. Then they saw the cultivators of the Dark World arriving. They turned out to be from the Dark Court. The leading figure's aura was especially terrifying. It was an apex-level cultivator as well. He was dressed in all black, and a terrifying aura of obliteration surrounded him. Princess Donghuang looked toward them. What were the people of the Dark Court doing here? Donghuang the Great was the prodigy of an era and met no opponent in his time. He spurred the great prosperity of the divine prefecture. Such an incredible being. I'm sure he wouldn't actually want to pick on the younger generation. Even if Futian was related to Emperor Yi Qing, Emperor Yi Qing had already passed on. I'm sure that Donghuang the Great would remember their friendship and let some things go instead of taking out his grudge on a young boy, the cultivator from the Dark Court said. This caused those from the divine prefecture to show a strange expression. The Dark Court wanted to protect Futian. They quickly realized what was happening. The Dark Court had some conflict with Futian. If that had happened before this, naturally, they would want Futian dead instead of him becoming their enemy. But now, knowing that Futian could be related to Emperor Yi Qing and that the divine prefecture Imperial Palace even took action to kill him, the Dark Court instead wanted Futian to stay alive. But as a result, wouldn't that enlarge the conflict between Futian and the divine prefecture? Naturally, that was the situation they wanted to see happen. I thought so too, of course. Donghuang the Great wouldn't take things out on a youngster. A cultivator from the empty divine realm stepped forward as well. Under the celestial skies, what was happening now seemed rather odd. Back then, Futian stood on the side of the divine prefecture in a war with the dark world and the empty divine realm, and they had even won the war for them. What was this supposed to be now? The divine prefecture Imperial Palace wanted to kill Futian, and the dark world and the empty divine realm came to protect him instead. That was certainly interesting. The cultivators of the two worlds didn't stand out just now. They must have been waiting for the relationship between Futian and the divine prefecture to deteriorate completely. Only when Princess Donghuang gave the order to eliminate Futian did they actually step out. You have no right to meddle in the divine prefecture's business, Princess Donghuang said coldly as her gaze swept across the cultivators from the two groups. The original realm doesn't belong to any single organization today. We've mentioned this before. Perhaps it is time to revise the division of the original realm. Futian is a cultivator of the original realm, and we think he won't belong to the divine prefecture or be a subordinate of the princess. So what right does that give princess to decide his fate? The cultivator from the Dark Court continued. Just then, Yushang led his group to step forward as well. As such, the devil world seemed to be protecting Futian too. This made Feng Ru frown as there were actually 3 worlds intervening now. They all wanted to stop them from killing Futian. Just then, another group of cultivators arrived from the skies, but they walked toward Princess Donghuang. The auras of these cultivators exuded justice and righteousness, and each of them had an outstanding temperament. They were cultivators from the human realm. One of the cultivators came before Princess Donghuang and said softly, "Princess, past matters have already been settled, and now they are all just the past." Surely an unparalleled figure like Donghuang the Great wouldn't fuss over things of the past. Why should the princess care about a mere Runhuang plain cultivator? I'm afraid that could even affect the great emperor's reputation. How about we just leave him be? Unexpectedly, the human realm was standing up for Futian as well. However, they seemed to be coming from a slightly different standpoint. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.